cuff, but not bad enough for surgery. And for a while, I had really a lot of pain putting on my socks. So I had used something similar to this that I had concocted. So I thought, hey, might as well take my idea and just use it for my project. So this is what I used to put my socks on because I had trouble reaching down with this arm and getting it. And those of you that know you have a dominant side, I definitely have a dominant side. I'm very much left-handed when I write, but very much right-handed when I'm putting certain things on. So this helped me to get the sock started, then I can reach it and pick it up. I know this is going to sound crazy, but in my house, I have a couple ceiling fans that have draw cords. I could not reach up with my arm to get it, and it just seemed like when I tried to use my left arm, it would make my right arm hurt. This gave me the extra. This hook allowed me to catch things like these cords, pull it on and put my ceiling fan on, that kind of thing. So I really did use this, and as you can see, it's just a large coat hook, and a clothespin and a ruler. But this is an example of an assistive device that for that Unit 4 lesson 2. And that was what I built for my prop for my presentation. Those of you that want to see the rubber band car, here's how I built my rubber band car here that we did a modification of it back in Maryland. So I thought maybe that might be it. It has some plastic wheels that took off some of the cords. So this is another example of making a rubber car out of very inexpensive materials. So there's a modification in the course, and this is the modification. So I thought maybe you might appreciate being able to see that. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but is everybody pretty much ready to go on the presentation this morning? Hi? You're ready to go? Okay. Well, hopefully your part will show up. Okay. Yeah, that's one thing with group work. If one doesn't show up, it can make things a little fun. And I will guarantee you, Carolyn, Curtis, and I will not fry at the stake. This is a learning progress, and I hope the big thing you guys get out of this is not only what you did during the 5 days, but also the resources from the other people in this room. That's the thing I always like about professional development. When I'm being forced to do something new, is when you can connect with other people in other districts and be able to, instead of having to come up with 20 ideas, you come up with one idea and somebody else comes up with an idea for the So I'm hoping that you guys,
give it a minute.
everybody has
Charge
to
back.
say it, right?
And these two are not sink in. So go ahead for right now. We'll just have it in. You know what?
Anybody have a problem if we send the emails out to everybody? Okay. And that way, you guys can connect with your fellow people that you get credit with in the last 5 days. So that way, as we move more and more to the next generation science standards and the Common Core math and the ELA, Kansas College, everybody is a college. Hopefully, we can draw on each other's resources.
If you guys come up with something during your implementation of this and teaching, you find out something works better for you, or you implemented some other material that works better, please share that with us. What I suggested until we get tech support going with doing a blog or something that you guys can log into, I've recommended that maybe we do a newsletter. So a couple times, like hopefully by the spring, we have a newsletter that goes out and says this is what's going on and how people are So please share those ideas and we'll share them with everybody else. So we'll email that to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn this over to Carolyn, because I have to go upstairs to the war room and, speak with the, I don't know why they had to do it this morning, but anyway, no big deal. Huh?
No big explosives up there.
No. So anyway, she's gonna take and help me by taking care of the, personal assist meetings, so.
Any of you that need to use the power hookup, if you're going to go through things up here, that's there. There's also, I don't think you need the audio cord, if you do, it's there. We are videotaping, so we would ask that you use a mic. You can hold it. There's one adequate if you want to flip, and you need to use your hands, but some of you there are two presenters, one's gonna have to hold it and one's gonna flip. But we'll have to turn these on, stick them up, and get them going.
The ones that need to plug in, does anybody have a, that will go into a PC, but does anybody have a Mac that you can grab it on? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, we have a.
You have a dollar, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
And
I'll
if
do
they're the
that.
same
If they're-
one,
yeah,
we go with it. If not,
Yeah.
if we need to go up and on that, we'll go.
Okay, so this one is live, there we go. So here we have to start, and then you watch turn these on, and you got to do the presentation. Who's ready? Well, somebody has to watch it.
Yeah.
Bonus points.
Bonus points for Alfred. All right. You guys need anything else that I can help? Yeah.
I think it's a middle school group.
This is me. Somebody that has faith in it, on these iPads.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's loud. Yeah, I never said, hello, here we go, what's on? Well, I can stay clear over there and get both of them last a few times, but I don't know if we want both of these or not, but we'll do it. Okay, now you can. Anything Mac related after that?
Okay, so, we were in charge of Unit 5, Lesson 3, so if you have been able to get into the portal, you want to look at it, if you look at it, then, I'll show you the things up here, and then, just kind of point out some parts. This whole, this is there to here, here's there to here, so, the emphasis is, because the students are supposed to data analysis, one design challenge, which we've changed a little bit. So they start to see how those things are connected. So one thing they point out is that some inventions come along by people just kind of messing around with stuff. They're not trying to do anything, or they're just trying to solve a problem that they have, and then that leads to extraordinary. And there's one part of the lesson we kind of want to that. There is, it's all, safety standards. These are not, these are national standards. I already know about the next engineering, the next generation site standards. There's assessment, multiple choice. There's also a brief constructive response, which there's a rubric for. The rubrics are shown here. It's hard to do rubrics with this one. I don't know if that's the case with the ones that you looked at. But there's also the brief constructive response, and we'll talk about where that comes in. There's also a poster. There's also one for a proposal and the actual design challenge. And Jessica and I kind of adapted that a little bit for our age group. We thought that both the proposal and the challenge was a bit much, and so we moved it to lots of resources. The top two are some really good videos that don't require you to have any account, or you don't have to pay for them. They're on the site called How Stuff Works, and they're really neat. And then not only those two, but the ones that are kind of linked to it. I spent a whole bunch, too much time looking at those videos because they were fun. It's all about different fuels and technology that are coming up with these. So those are fun. So I do want to point out that you don't have to have, just click on that link or copy and paste it to your address bar and then you're good. The resources at the bottom here, we put together a custom Google search. So we have some QR codes, and if you scan those, then they'll link you right to that search. And all of these websites that they suggested are there. So you just put in hydrogen fuel, alternative fuel, something like that, and these sites will pop up. That specific keyword. So the first thing we do with students in the lesson plan is talk about oil prices and the demand for oil, and what kind of impact that's having on our environment. Talk about environmental ramifications of recent disasters, accidents. And then you have the students think, prepare, share about ideas to reduce oil demand. And then the next thing we'll do is design a poster for alternative fuels and transportation options. So there's a couple different. So we just decided we would do one on Pit Collage. This had in fact, we are one to run iPads with our 7th and 8th graders. And so they can do this. They can do this pretty easily. There's a rubric for the poster. So that's the one that it's really quite crazy. So we came up with 4 different pictures of alternative fuels or alternative energies to fuel cars. That's basically. So you can do that digitally, you can do that, paper pencil markers and crayons. So after the poster, they present that poster, they talk about different options. And then that's where the reconstructed response comes in. There's some prompts underneath that lesson plan tab for them to answer. And then there's a rubric for that as well. So right now we're in the explanation part. We talk about their posters, the infos. Then we get into a discussion about past inventions and innovations that either dealt with something that somebody maybe had a scientific background or didn't. There's an example here of first a Dutch doctor who wanted to explore under the water, and so he came up with basically the first submarine. But he wasn't trying to build a submarine; he was just trying to get under the water and still be able to breathe for a long period of time. And then you've got your brief constructive response that falls in there. And then this is the time about transportation time.
Right, so the timeline, the trends in transportation, I just did a quick sketch here in my journal that the students would actually create what you can have them do it on the timeline software, one of the websites, or you can have them draw it out, actually do the timeline around your room. But I just came up with a couple. You have to have the date, the description of the transportation, what it is powered by, some positive impacts and then negative impacts. So I just did something here. I did bicycle, motorcycle, cable car, and then hovercraft.
I think we're picking up the good feed just by having it on. Yeah. I think we're doing good.
I just thought that.
No, we're doing good. That's what I asked her. I said, should we interrupt? She said, we're picking up good feed.
So that's the transportation timeline. The students would create one. Like we said, there's a rubric for that. That's about it for the timeline. I just did it in my journal, but you can have them do it in the journal. You can have them do it online, print it out, draw it, create it, whatever.
So then, so we did the poster, they did the transportation timeline, and then they come up with a proposal for a car or transportation that runs on alternative energy source. And then they actually design one. And we changed that a little bit. We thought maybe the proposal and the design was a bit too much. We're going to decide to do it in 4 hours, maybe 4 weeks. If we were to, we probably wouldn't have to do probably more the proposal and the design together, and then actually have them do a mock-up or the prototype of a vehicle that would run on something other than yes. So
Yeah, we just felt that it was important that they get a hands-on part. It's not just a lot of research and writing a report, writing a paragraph. We wanted them to be doing something hands-on, so that's why we went with making the prototype. So we went and made some version of a hovercraft. We kind of started with a plate, and that really didn't work out so well. So we changed our idea. That was too much surface area, so we went to something smaller with the CD. And we saw, done some research, we saw an idea that you could use a soap ball platform that pop up and with the balloon around the top of the soap ball platform, that air would go down into the, or under the CD. But it actually turned out that the soap bottles have lost too much air in the process. So we went with a good old-fashioned straw and styrofoam duct tape. Seems to do the trick. So you can blow it up, plug the hole, and then it will cover like this. And cover tight. So I drew it in our journal. And we designed in the journal the different systems that we tried. And as far as materials, we give the students a wide range of materials, different plates, cups, straws, styrofoam, duct tape, everything you see here. But then we also thought that we'll let them bring anything that they want, as long as it's materials. We're not going to limit it, but let them be creative. We can do what they use.
They're not bringing in a $20 piece of something that mom and dad didn't know they were
Right.
Or H2 or CO2 tanks or something like that. We have a couple of solar panels, nothing took out of my closet, and then we had, it's just ultimately too hard to take it up to the other. And, we don't go back to the other, so we can try to make those, I don't know if you've been, using some, the PDF site that, that you told us about. Yeah, this is one of the things that was on there, along with lots of other ideas. They're all on there, maybe hot bottles, and we could go as far as to get an old bicycle pump, or bicycle valve thing with the master speed. Cut it off and put it into actually do something nice for fun. Put the air into whatever it was. Get a pinhole.
And then some of this lesson comes after the rubber band part, so rubber band part. How quickly I improvement on your previous.
I don't remember where the rubber band part was. Yeah. I don't remember either. Probably. Yeah, if they wanted to do the rubber band car or make modifications to it, I think that would be good to springboard off of. We'd have Lego wheels and things like that if they wanted to try and build one that way. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
QR code.
Yes.
You found the QR code. You programmed the QR code,
Yeah, we made it.
We created it.
and you did the how.
QRstuff.com.
There you go, QRstuff.com.
Yeah.
You can put text, pictures, links. I don't know. Yeah. I use it for math problems all the time.
Yeah, and then they download the app to their iPad or device or whatever. And there's lots out there for scanning them. I think this is the one I used.
And you created that for the sole purpose of them finding the sites you wanted them to go to?
Right.
Only
Yeah.
searching within those sites.
Right. So that they weren't. I don't
All
know.
over
There's
Google.
probably stuff that they're going to find out there that's not appropriate on the sites that are there because you just never know what's going to pop up. But
Each one is a different site.
no,
No.
it's all the same search. So what happens when, does anybody want to scan it? See if it actually, I mean, we tested it, so we know it works better. See if it works on your device, and then it should just come up with a Google page, real simple, blank, and just has a search box, and then you would put in,
Well, if you do it on yours,
air. Oh, yeah.
I have to get one of those back.
You would just put in compressed air, and then whatever site of the ones that I entered in there. Uh-huh. Or hydrogen fuel, or solar energy, or.
Would you give them this with a list of things they could type in there then for search opportunities? You're just gonna tell them that they're gonna search for
Alternate fuel,
Transportation.
fuel,
Yeah.
So that's your only guide for them is use this code,
To help fill out your
Here.
transportation timeline.
and it's gonna take them to the sites you have
Right.
already looked at. Is that in the world of education is very smart.
Did it go? Did it pop up with sites and stuff?
Almost everything.
Okay.
You would find it on Go.
From what came
I
up?
searched a lot of them, and
Uh-huh.
I got a lot of stuff you would find about that.
Okay. So I think QR codes are fun. There's lots of different sites to make them, but, so when I made the custom search, it gives me a URL and I just copied and pasted into that, box there and it gives you one, it makes one for you. And then you
it
can,
would save a lot of time too.
right.
Kids going to the sites that aren't really gonna be helpful.
Mhm. Yeah. And I didn't come up with those sites. Those are just the sites that are on the portal. In the resources section. Suggested sites. I just copied and pasted them.
And so you used those specifically, you didn't
Yeah.
add any others?
Uh-uh.
But you could.
You could.
Yeah. If you found one that you really liked. Or something.
Okay. You said that this was supposed to be a 4-day plan, but.
4 hour.
A 4-hour plan that you could take in 4 weeks to do.
Well,
Not having that opportunity, the departments you're in, you're both in math, right?
no, I'm in science.
You're in science, math science. So would there be other departments that you might utilize within your school that would join in your bandwagon to make this a little more lengthy?
Should be. We might be able to get the
Social
reading
studies.
teacher or social studies teacher to.
For the timeline, you could do the timeline and the history class fit fell with the, you talk to them ahead of time and when they're researching a certain time period or vehicles. You could easily make it work.
And by this time, it's Unit 5, Lesson 3, so maybe they're really good. By this time, if you've worked through all the others, maybe they're really good at getting the journal done and getting the research done and knowing how to do things, so maybe it wouldn't take as long as we think. But at this point, we thought it would take longer, especially for the research. They have to do some analysis. They have to do some trend analysis. And I don't know about your 7th graders, but just saying the word trend analysis, those 2 words together might throw them for a loop.
You said something about doing a modification to a rubric.
No, well, so there's
Show one of the
2.
rubrics and what you would recommend.
There's the proposal rubric, which I already have this downloaded. I should just. And then there's also the design challenge rubric, which means you would have to do two of those things. You would have to do a proposal and a design.
And we were going to kind of combine them, so you could take the rubrics, the 2 rubrics, and combine it to make it one.
Okay, so it's not 2 separate scoring for you.
We thought that would be too much.
And so this is the presentation of organization, subject matter, design. So what's different on the other one, on the other rubric?
Oops. Good question.
And they didn't ever, in this one, they didn't ever have to make anything. They just had to come up with a design. So it was, this is still the other one. It's still, oh, there it is. And we wanted them to make something. We wanted them to try some different things, like the hovercraft, or actually make something go with compressed air. But in this one, they weren't building anything. They were just designing and researching.
Look at all the reports in this one though. I mean, you really could spend a lot of time. You're doing a report on power source, or report on impacts of the environment, report on safety and capacity. You have a whole section that's devoted to design.
I think it's gonna take forever.
Yeah, it could. Any other questions? Good job, ladies. Appreciate you sharing. Who's getting ready? All right.
Because I think with the other positions, one is fine. I see it. It's the only one now. Yeah, we're not going to show some of the documents. Yeah, they're all good. Okay. We had Unit 6, Lesson 1, and it's basically establishing a lunar outpost. So this is the portal. It's basically like all the others, same basic setup. Just look at the lesson plan real quick. Basically, you just start the discussion, start talking about why we would need an outpost on the moon. But I think it starts with, you start looking at the ratio of mass, volume, everything for the moon compared to Earth. And so it takes them through this first document here. And I just had my kids use their iPads to search these items. And you just had to make sure that it was in the same units, at least based on your teacher resource, so that matches that document. But if they are tech savvy, they see the link down there. So if they go to that link, they should get everything that they need. So they don't have to do too much searching on that. But that's kind of the first document. Starts looking at comparison between the Earth and the moon.
So the link at the bottom of that gives them all the information to fill in.
Most of it, and it's in the correct unit, so you don't have to worry about changing units, changing the basically the scientific notation on that. Then you just continue to the discussion. Obviously, they know that that's the moon, and you start talking about that. Then you start talking about what they see in some of those other pictures. Mine are sideways here, but print this out for the students so they can look at that. You discuss the landscape and just other things that they might notice from these pictures. So you started with looking at the moon, then you look at those pictures, but it gives you all the questions to kind of take the students through on that. And then, that's just the teacher resource. Then that kind of leads them into, okay, this is an image of what a lunar outpost might look like. And so then they start looking at each of those pieces, and you start talking about what that might be used for. And so it kind of starts brainstorming those different systems. But then basically after that, we kind of took it different ways from this point on. Kind of what I did, well, it takes you through, see all the different systems that make up a lunar outpost. And so what I did with my group is I broke them into groups. So I only have 13 students, so I broke them into groups of 3 and then gave them each 2 systems. And so then they start, and it says to give them, duration was 3 hours. I basically took 2 hours for research. And so one day I let them just go and start researching their system using the provided links in here. And then the second day, gave them a little bit more research, but then after that, I started wanting them to come up with mock-ups for what their system might look like. So it's kind of getting them to take the research and start planning their own system. So then they had to do mock-ups, and then we didn't actually finish that, so I don't have pictures of these, but they had to do those mock-ups, come up with a list of everything they might need to build a model of that. And then what I was thinking about having them do probably this week is select one member out of the group to be like on an executive council or something. And then while the other two are building their model, that council kind of talks about how they might put this all together into one outpost. So I'm going to get them to build their models, and then they have to figure out how to put them all together. So I'm going to build one landscape with this one model. Now I know they attacked them a little bit differently.
So you are doing this in your class?
You're not ready?
Yes. Yes.
Are you ready for me, John?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because we wanted to try it out just to see what it's going to look like. And so we all started that this week with our classes.
Wrong button. Come on. There we go. We started out with a little bit. We said we need to have a name for it, and that's everything needs a name. So we tried to discuss a little bit that NASA does different things. So we came with Camp Selena, because it's an outpost and everything. Selena is the Greek goddess of the moon. So we're like, hey, what fitting thing? So we voted on it, and majority won on that one. We had some close runner-ups, but we're going to stay with this one.
That good, eh?
Yeah, there's a good one.
Okay.
We focus on temperature control. Maybe better not. Insulation, we focus on insulation there and temperature control, and we had to research what kind of worked best and everything. And talking, hey, it's in the moon, you got to have airtight and sort of different things. And we don't. The range is from 260 degrees Fahrenheit to negative 150 degrees Fahrenheit. How cold does your house get? When there's freezing outside. So they started talking about where does heat go and how we get heat loss and stuff, and what type of insulation. They did find out that they said the spray foam isn't a good idea up in space because everything's going to freeze. The chemicals will freeze and it won't work. Somebody found that out, so we thought if it's on the internet, it's got to be true. So we said we got to go with fiberglass a little bit and how much we need, and we're like, how big the first thing is? We got to bring everything from Earth the first time, and we were going to spend more time. We probably would look at the weight and how much we're going to need to bring the materials. Because some of the stuff, well, it did say some of the stuff the moon is able to produce, like oxygen, different things like that, and some building materials on the moon. So we're like, well, fiberglass probably won't be on the moon, so we'll have to bring everything we need. We talked about, there's some other things, how much insulation. They said they're going to need lots of it. So then we started diving into a little bit of the electrical system, like we need solar panels and how much you need. We're trying to look at how much the space station has and how much it produces, and would that be enough, that size, would that be enough for what we need for our camp up on the moon? And that's kind of where we ran out of time a little bit on that. But these guys have a little more hands-on thing here, so I'll turn it over to the Haven.
I started through it, and I wanted to teach the curriculum just to test it and see, whether it would work for the kids. We got into that first graphic organizer or data table, and they were good with the research part of it, but when they got to the ratios and the proportions, that was disastrous for them. My kids weren't ready to work with scientific notation and figure out the ratios on those. So I kind of backed off of that. I'm good with helping, reinforce what they learned in math class, but I don't think it's up to me to teach it because that's not my thing. So we sort of stopped with that, and I said, we'll come back to that after you guys learn that in math class. Then we got down to where we were supposed to research, and the kids were kind of so-so about researching. They like to jump in and do the hands-on stuff, and they don't like to research so much. Although after we did the hands-on stuff, I think this week we'll focus on going back and finding out what's there, and then maybe have them go back and redo some of their designs. But each person got to sign up for the system that they wanted to sign up for. And I just kind of grabbed some things out of my back room. Some of these, I don't quite remember what they said it's supposed to do. They're just, you know, things put together. This one, though, I think is fairly good. This is their little terrariums, and they got plants inside of it. And they're capturing the water, and they're going to use water from that. And so all of the water that they get from their plants, they think will be enough to fill this water tank. So, you know, we'll have to go back and talk about that stuff. One kid, of course, wanted to make it really realistic because I said water is an issue, you know. What else? Oh, energy is an issue. So of course, this is his urine that is going to somehow be filtered out. It isn't really, it's just yeah. But no, it's not.
You just throws out everybody.
And I'm touching it.
Hey,
And
we're
then,
getting
you know, we
hands-on.
had to have the discussion, if your urine looks like this, you need to be drinking more water. That's not a good thing. Then what these guys did, this is a magical kind of material that will filter out the CO2 and not allow it to go through, but only oxygen goes through. So that's how they're going to make oxygen. Transportation, some of them brought in Legos. And this is, you know, it's going to the sky rail thing from here to here. Some of these I think are maybe not quite as good. They brought in modeling clay and really wanted to work with that. And a kid had a whole bunch of metal things that he brought in, but his Morse code is a little bit weak for a communication system. This is probably the coolest one, I think. And this is just stuff that I had in the back room. I had some old motors and a hub. I think it's from a wind energy workshop that I've gone to. Anyway, if you go ahead and attach this just to like a AA battery, this very slowly turns. And so we hung that from the ceiling, and that was our ceiling fan for the day. And that would help with temperature control. So they all had really interesting ideas as to how they would develop that system. I think one of the biggest things my kids didn't understand, I'd say, well, how are you going to power that? Well, with a battery. Well, what do you do when the battery, you know, goes dead? Well, I'm going to plug it in and recharge it. And so today what they're working on are, I found an article, 8 unique ways of generating electricity. So I think maybe we would do that before we headed into this, so they had an idea about energy. One of the things that one of the classes did a really good job of tying all the systems together, and they worked well together. The other class wasn't making that connection, so I assigned a project manager, and he would run from team to team and say, okay, you need to go talk to them, they're doing this. And that seemed to work out real well too. So anyway. David?
I did mine a little different too. We each did something a little different. And with my kids, we started out, I put the 9 different systems on the board, and I had groups I made, about 3 to 4 kids in a group. And I started out by saying, we're just going to choose a system. We started research, we had iPads, and they got to research the internet and find out how their systems work. Well, as we were doing that, we realized some of them said, well, we could do this system and tie it into this system, and then we could tie that same system into this system, they can all work together. Well, since they started noticing that, I asked them if they wanted to do more work, and of course they said yes. I couldn't believe it. And what they did then is we adapted it, and every group did all 9 systems in my class. And they researched and had to design all their systems and how they would work together. And what they did is they had to draw and design their bases. And their bases had to house 20 people, so had to house the entire class. And what they had to tell me with their bases was how their system worked, if it worked with another system, how that connection was made. And then they had to tell me why they put it where they put it in their base. And some of them were confused why they had to do that. And I said, well, are you going to put your air in the middle or off to a side and hope it gets to the other side? Or are you going to, where are you going to put your water? And how and why they had to put and design it where they did. So, I mean, this was one. This one they call, and if they got to name their base, this was USS Jackson, who was actually designed by Sean. So I don't know why he named it what he did, but he did. But I mean, we have all different kinds of bases. Some of them, they wanted more and more paper. So I got some that it just kept getting larger and larger. But they all designed and had to again determine where everything went. That was days 1 and 2. This is a 3-hour thing, I believe is what they said. So in the end, it took about 4 days to complete. And then the last 2 days, they had to somehow promote their base. So they had to make a poster. They had to, some did iMovie trailers. Some built 3-dimensional models. But they had to promote their base, and they had to then present to the class of why the rest of the class would choose their base and how their systems worked and why theirs is the best. And I do have some pictures if we can,
Should just.
David, I have a question. What grade did those drawings, the drafting?
Those are 7th grade, and I did use one of my 8th grade classes.
Okay, and did you give them a primer on how to draw?
They kind of went, I mean, they just jumped into it. That's the one thing about this, I was really surprised. I basically gave them the parameters of saying, you have these 9 systems, it's on the moon, and they went for it. And I mean, that's why some drew larger stuff, some drew smaller. And the one thing I know I told Diane was they quit asking me questions. And they were so involved.
Engaged in it.
And I would just walk around there and I'd ask them a few questions, but they wouldn't even talk to me. They were so into this project. And that's what surprised me the most about this, is how, they were into it. And here is,
Sorry, are you self-contained, or do you have you said 29?
I have, my average class is about 20. So we put 20, I made a design that said your base has to house 20 people. And so we gave a number to it so that they could design and have a base to support that many people. Some of them did, I guess, here's a Lego model of theirs. Some did a poster, and this basically shows their base and talks about what it does and why they should come. They have air in their houses and their water. This is a 3-dimensional model someone put together. Here's another one here with all the different buildings and connections in between, and each thing does something different. You got the boys' room here. This is actually an ER, so there's a hospital on the moon.
It's right next to the boys' room.
And on this one, there's actually a dome that would fit around this, so they have little signs inside the dome. This is another poster, and on this one, their base is in the center. And the different parts of their base, they found pictures on the internet of what things might look like inside. And then one group, and if I can show it.
Go back to your Lego one. Go back to your first Lego one.
And then I had some groups that did digital posters and a lot of digital stuff, and I was going to bring those, but we locked up all our iPads over the weekend because we had a debate tournament, so I didn't get a chance to get those, but I did get a couple saved here that I can show a trailer. Now this one, at first when I saw this, the student made, I was kind of confused of how he chose and why he chose what he did, but you can enjoy it, and I'll tell you why I think they made it after. One of my gifted students. And I think what their idea is before you go anywhere, you send an animal first. There's dogs in space and monkeys. I think the donkey was where they went. But they had and they met my requirements. So I told them they had to put into their presentation some of their key systems of how that supports life. So they got their water in there, they got their food, they had their energy. So they got it in there, but that's, I kind of enjoyed that one. I showed it to me. But that's what my class did, and they all kind of came up with something different in the end.
So you had when
you did not make them choose that they all had to do a model replica?
They all had to promote. So after they all drew their base, they had all 9 systems. They had to use all 9 in my class. And after they drew their model or their base design, they had to then produce, their options were as a poster, an iMovie trailer, or movie, a 3-dimensional model. There was something else. They had 4 choices, and each group did design their own. And their goal was to promote by showing at least 4 of their systems.
How do you grade it?
Haven't been graded yet.
Okay, so how are you going to grade
Well,
it?
there's a rubric they have to follow about making sure they have their systems. I haven't completely totally designed yet, but I mean, as long as I got their systems in there, this was more of a learn how this worked intro to it, since we just started this type of program thing. Yeah, I really haven't graded it
You're
yet.
working a little bit on.
After getting the donkey movie, it's kind of hard to determine how I'm going to grade some of this stuff. But yeah.
You had a bell curve stuff.
Yeah, there's
What was my other question? Okay, tell me, you guys, what areas, what disciplines? You said
Science, I'm across the
science.
hallway from David, yeah.
And your science as well?
yes.
The middle one?
Also good.
All subjects. And we,
And I'm 7, 8, and 8 all subjects.
okay, so this is what I'm wondering, because like immediately, David, you were talking about all the stuff that kids jumped into. Would you be able to utilize other teachers? And you talked about ratios and kids didn't understand it. Next year, when you do this, what would you do differently? Who would you incorporate to help and make this project bigger or better?
I'd go down and find out when they're covering this in math class and then do it like right after they finished it, yeah. Yeah, so we support what they're doing and I don't have to try to teach them if they were not ready for it.
You don't think there could be any team teaching as you're doing it that?
We have 2 different teachers and one works at a little bit slower pace than the other one. So I'm not sure it would work, yeah. So I think maybe
And since you guys teach both,
I just
all
need more
subjects.
planning time.
I mean, when you're the one man
I
show,
I can borrow from one subject, like I could spend all day on science if I want to. I mean, I have a lot of flexibility in my day. And if I spend all day on science, then the next day I can
I'd be able to,
get back.
necessarily want to wrap some ideas up and maybe might have an ability to jump out of what we're doing in math or language arts and try to tie it in to make things flow and make things work a little bit better. We're doing ratios, we can jump over to ratios and math. And we're talking about how to write something up there. And if you're on the slide, or we can show a little more, these are things for language arts.
Yeah, I try and tie as much in as I can. I'll pull a story from our lit book, or we'll
Well, I
read a
can see that
novel
there
that
was-
ties into this.
your assessment, there was a brief response, so you're getting language arts in there. It's heavy on the science with this particular unit, and then math is coming in, so those 3, I think, in this unit especially are tied there.
I think this would be a really good unit to do, like, our 8th graders leave like a week before our 7th graders do at the end of the year. And then it's kind of like, how do we entertain the kids? I think something like this would be really good because you could bring in all the disciplines, everybody could work on it. It's not real taxing, it's not heavy content stuff that kids aren't going to remember. So we may look at something like
A
this.
cumulative, let's go back and let's reevaluate
Yeah.
and let's work together.
Yeah.
So I tie in a lot more social studies with it too. I mean, because this is in a way kind of westward expansion. I could tie it into my westward
History, what's
expansion. Why are we moving west? Why would we need to go to the moon? Why do we want to go further? I mean, it's all exploration. So I'm just trying to.
Questions, other questions, since I dominated.
How long are your class periods?
45 minutes.
So you guys aren't quite finished with this unit. You're like midway through.
Yeah.
You still got a little bit.
Mine's pretty much done.
Done, it's an evaluation.
Yeah.
You're
We'll
still
go back, kids will wrap this up and then probably share with each other and show each other what they did.
Are you?
We're probably gonna talk a little bit more. We can hit all the things. We have smaller numbers, but so we'll kind of
Okay.
tell everybody we survived.
Here we go. Interested in feedback, let us know. Well, good job, group. Way to go.
That's yours too.
Hey, you guys might want to be careful that you're all Wi-Fi, live feed, everything. That's live feed. Don't think you guys
Our unit, interesting enough, was Unit 5, Lesson 2, which I think came right before the Pratt unit. So I think it helps that unit.
So it's unit what?
5-2, or lesson 5, Unit 5, Lesson 2.
Okay, so right.
And ours was a clean solution to a messy problem. The big thing here is why technology has allowed humans to prosper. Negative impacts have also resulted. And what our unit basically was about oil spills and how they affect the environment, and what can we do to clean it up. It says the lesson duration is 4 hours. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I've done 5-6 days. I will do. They're working on today and tomorrow as well. I did it with an 8th grade class as a primer because I didn't want to do it on my 7th grade class and then have to redo it again without getting all the previous information. So I kind of gave my 8th graders the rough jump start to this. And I didn't make them do it as in depth as I think I'd make the 7th graders do. So I think it was a little faster. Plus, I wasn't there 2 of the 5 days they worked on it already. So I explained everything on Tuesday. They worked on it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They did it on their own. And then Friday we came back together and we designed some stuff. So I'm looking at like 5.5 hours. And I think I can make it longer. I think all these you can make longer easily if you want to build on them. I will.
So rather than going through the unit, we kind of pulled things out and just put them on slides instead. So that's the big idea. And looking at, yes, technology is good, but also it can have negative impacts. And how does society deal with that? And even some of the societal influences of technologies and how certain corporations will push a technology, and sometimes it's not the best thing for the whole society. One of the things that I think is important is just to hook them from the beginning. I know they, like some of you said, they like to get right in on the hands-on. So there were a couple of videos just that we found on our own that give a very brief 2-minute explanation of the Exxon Valdez spill and then the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, which is really the spill that this unit focuses on. But they do offer some opportunities to compare and contrast the two. Particularly because the Valdez one, that was the very first, and we thought there was a lot of oil spilled, but yet in looking at the BP oil spill, it was 10 times as much. So.
And it's ironic that they use an oil spill from 1989, and your kids will probably have no idea what the heck the Exxon Valdez was, let alone where it happened or what it affected. I'm young enough that I remember, but I was like, I didn't know much about it. So it was a chance for me to learn more about the Exxon Valdez as well.
The other thing is you can find all kinds of videos. They reminded me of those adopt an animal commercials, that make you cry. They have lots and lots of videos about the poor wildlife in the areas of oil all over them and people trying to clean them up. So you can hook them with that too. So the first 2.1 lesson, just the teacher kind of gives a bit of a history, which I thought was interesting. And some of the things that are highlighted is, why is there offshore drilling? What is the cause of the spill? What are the impacts, societal, economic, and environmental, short-term, long-term effects? How are they cleaned up, and should it continue? So those are kind of the subsequent questions from that big idea. And that's just some of the summation of what is in that unit.
And I did this a little different too. When I went through with my class, instead of giving them the sheet first, I basically told them, I wrote 3 things on the board. I wrote oil spills, I wrote Exxon Valdez, and I wrote Horizon Deepwater. And I said, you need to search these. They need to write down information on each one, and I gave them 20 minutes. So I basically made them, I showed them the video so they kind of got some knowledge, but then I made them prime themselves before I gave them the facts about the Exxon Valdez and the Deepwater Horizon. So I made them kind of do their own priming, made them find a kind of their own information, because this is going to lead into another thing. Well, I didn't want to give them all the information for the rest of the projects. I wanted to kind of make them do some of the research on their own, which they did fairly well. Most of them remembered the BP, none of them remembered Exxon Valdez. So it was a learning experience and kind of a curve for them. And if you remember, there are actually two different types of spills in two different areas of the world. One's a ship off a reef in Alaska, and one's a deep water drill rig at 5,000 feet. Okay, so in that sense, when you're cleaning it up, it's kind of going to be similar, but where the leak is can cause different issues.
And that actually was one of our changes later on, we'll get to, was we talked about water temperature. The fact that one was in the Pacific and one was in the Gulf, and how that might have affected the cleanup is the temperature of the water. This is one of the resources that I thought was excellent. It takes an interactive map, and the website is there, but what it does is it takes it day by day, and this is in the Gulf of Mexico, and it talks about where the spill originates. Up at top, it starts in April 22nd, and you know they thought they would be cleaned up in 2 to 4 weeks when actually it took almost 5 months. And so it goes day by day as you play it, how the oil is spread, how it's dispersed, and then it'll give you each day and what the biggest news information was for that day. And eventually you'll see that some people get fired and things like that. Also, a tropical storm comes in at one point, so they have to stop cleanup. And then as the storm passes and they're able to clean up again.
And you can see over here, the Exxon Valdez, the difference in the oil spill versus the two, which that was another thing I had my students look at was one has the exponential to be numerous, and one has the exponential. It can only get so big because there's only so much oil on a tank.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking basically about a well. And I tried to change this. I brought Kansas in, and I think Kansas produces, it's either 200 million or 200 billion barrels of oil a year. So I made them do that research as well to tie something close to home. I said, and we were talking about some of those stuff, and we're going to get into it, and I'll probably just hold off on that because we're going to talk about it in a minute.
But this also gives you a lot of chances for comparison and contrast as well.
Was this in?
Yes, this is one of the materials in the unit.
Is it the next one? It's coming. It's coming.
And this is, I don't know where this fit in the unit, but at some point they just talked about these 3 big ideas. So we just threw down some ideas of.
We tried to prime them with this. So instead of them trying to figure out all this information on their own, we didn't give them information. We said, okay, what's it used for? What are the political issues surrounding oil harvesting? And what are some environmental issues around oil harvesting? So we primed them with a question, and then we wanted them to find the answer. Okay, they kind of brought this up in the lesson plan, but we wanted to direct it a little more. We didn't want to give them the answers, but we wanted to give them, okay, here's the big question. Can you answer this big question with research? Eventually they'll get to it, but how many 7th graders are really thinking about politics? So you kind of got to probe them in the politics direction. So what are some political issues?
Which would bring in your social studies teacher with whatever they're working on. And then also we felt that it was important to make it current as well by looking at Kansas oil production and wind energy. What are some alternatives, which I think the next unit then went into, which was nice to see. And then also even the fracking that's going on in our region, and what are the societal impacts of that, and who is pushing that politically and financially, and what impact might that have on our future. So we thought it had a lot of current events that would be brought in as well. So this, like John said, could go on for many more days.
That lesson, like compare and contrast. This is where I started talking to them about, the differences in the 2 spills. And it talks about how long the spills are. This was a 1-day spill. It took longer to clean up. It didn't take as long to clean up. We don't have that here. It says exactly where it's at.
I think this information came from some of the articles that they.
This is stuff they gave us. This is part of that handout they gave us to start with. This is what we came back with later because we wanted them to do some of the research before. We just gave them the information.
So we pulled it out of the article that they would have as a resource. And I like the fact that it uses an article as a primary resource, because I think that's, as a language arts teacher, I think that's a good skill to be able to pull that information out in order to compare and contrast.
I'm gonna pull this out because I thought it was confusing. The next part was, it's called chart that spill. This was probably the part I thought was the most confusing as far as the aspect, because it says students assign groups 2 or 3 work together to create graph, pie chart, line graph, or other that demonstrate the similarities and our differences. Now, I'm going to go back to our other sheet, because this was one of the big things we talked about was, you know, there's got to be a better way we can do this. So maybe a Venn diagram. You have one, the other, put them in the middle, put them together. Well, in my eyes, that's not necessarily a chart. That's a Venn diagram. It's a little different, you know, the whole aspect. We also talked about physically having them map out the oil spill, the largest affected region, and see what the difference is. You could have them on 2 sheets and put them over each other. And we can talk about this, but the currents can severely affect an oil spill. And there's a reason that if you go back to the other sheet, there was 11,000 miles of coastline in Alaska affected and 13 in this one. Well, that 11,000 miles was at 1/10 or 1/20th the oil. So it spread that much faster because it was just being pounded up on the shores. We also talked about infographics. So you could go online, create an infographic, you do it on your sheet. You could create a physical representation to show the amount of loss or waste in each spill. Kind of like what they did in that last one. We talked about after she found it. You know, we could have kids create something similar to that for both of them. You know, maybe day-to-day pictures, and then or even information, a timeline of information. Just different ways to do it, because the chart that spill is kind of confusing. You know, what are you going to make a pie chart of similarities and contrasts? I mean, you can, but you know, it's one of those things it didn't make a lot of sense to me or her, I think. Pros and cons. This is the hardest thing to wrap the kid's head around. There are pros to an oil spill. There are pros to car accidents. There are pros to natural disasters. It's all about spinning a bad thing into a bad situation into a good solution. It's all about technology change. You know, there'd be a lot more people dying in car accidents if there wouldn't have been a car accident, because they have continuously made cars safer and safer and safer because of car accidents. Because government regulations have changed. Standards have changed, the way they build cars has changed, you know, what they put in them. All these things have changed because of bad things that have happened. It's basically spinning a bad problem into a possible solution. It also talks about the new standards, government, and I kind of talked about it. So those are all the things that can be pros. And, you know, I asked my kids, I primed them before I gave this, I said, are there any pros? And not one of them said yes. And I said, are you sure? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, what is it? And they're like, we know you want a yes because you're kind of probing. I'm like, yeah, there's a reason. You know, would your car be safe if somebody didn't wreck? You know, it's never a good thing when somebody dies in a car accident or any accident. But we also learn from it. Safety regulations also changed. It's the reason OSHA's around and a pain in the ass. But they're also keep us safe.
And that's one of the things that I reiterate in technology as a whole is that, you know, what is technology, and using the definition that it's something created to solve a problem. So if you don't have a problem, then, you know, where's the solution? So that's one of the main focuses that I have.
Did you have to research any of the pros and actually find what they are? The reason I ask is I have a son who is an engineer, who works for a small startup company in Colorado, and they have invented the technology that would have cut that off with a laser. And that was when the phone quite a big company. But did you have them find those kinds of things or just come up with this?
That was part I told them they could use the internet. And I wasn't there that day, so I don't exactly know how they went about it, but I told them to use any resource you have. So the only one you can't use is the substitute. I said, and I told the sub owners, I said, do not answer questions, tell them to use the resources.
That was just the list we came up with, just as we were kind of going through the lesson as to, you know, what would we maybe expect.
They did come up with some of this stuff, and I told them, I primed them. I said, hey, we're going to do a project. You got to clean up oil. Use the internet as a resource. And I'm going to go back to the compare and contrast. Let me talk about rain time. So warm water, cold water. And this is something I thought about, wasn't on this thing. You know, there are two different things. There are hundreds of types of different oil. Can cause different problems for cleanup. You also have warm water, cold water. In cold water, oil will stay more in a solid form. It'll stay more grouped together. In warm water, it'll disperse. But at the same time, think about how many more species live in a warm climate and warm water than cold water. So you have less species affected in Alaska than you'd have affected in the Gulf of Mexico. You still have the same problems, but you have less species. Oil tends to spread faster in warm water. You know, when you put oil in hot water, it's gonna start rolling around. When you put oil in cold water, it gets solidified. And it's actually easier to clean water off of ice or oil off of ice, which is something I found as well. All these little things that I didn't even know before I started looking into it. Not meaning to go backwards. Concept map. Sorry, go ahead.
So the next lesson is explaining to kids what a concept map is, which my thought is very much like a web. And of course, I'm a language arts teacher, so we web all the time. So it explains to them how to create a concept map and doing it different ways by using the sticky notes and things like that. And not just the fact that you're brainstorming ideas, but that you're also organizing ideas and you're ranking ideas as you create the concept map. And the sticky notes allow for that in order to move it around. So John's students actually did this exercise and created a concept map. And then the next step from that then is they present ideas from their concept map to the class.
And I told this, and this is one of the instructions I gave this up, because I found that I learned a little bit more because I was making this stuff, do some of this stuff. I planned it all out, but I told them, I said, give them sticky notes and let them write it down and then put their ideas on notes, spread it out, and then once they're done and they think they have everything they need, then they have to go back in and they have to figure out what's going on. In the middle should be oil. This says BP, but actually the middle is oil spill. The topic is oil spills. So you can see on all of them, and I told them, I said, make sure that you talk about environment, political, make sure you talk about the ways to clean up oil. One of the biggest pros that came out of this was there was a company that actually held a competition, and I think they were given $25 million or $25 billion to the company that could take the most oil out of water in a minute. And the minimum standard was 2,500 gallons a minute. I know there's a company in Iowa that did like 1,600 gallons in 1 minute, and all they did was change the way they did it. But they had tested 3 ways. They had tested on flat water, wave water, and then I can't remember what the last one was. But I found it very interesting that they had these competitions, and it spurred these competitions trying to, and that's what I told them. That's the biggest thing is that happens. People are going to get on board with this and try and, they're trying to fix the problem. And some companies, at whatever expense it takes, will try and fix this problem.
Okay, and then in 2.7, they have the writing application, which it sounds like most of the units had. This is the prompt that they're given, considering the consequences of the BP oil disaster. Should the United States allow more drilling in inshore coastal waters? So,
this is what my kids are actually doing today. I changed it up. I did the project first, and then I'm doing this kind of because I wanted to have a prototype for the day. So we did that.
Which I think is a very natural extension because, like we've all said, they're middle schoolers. They want to get their hands on it. So why not solve the problem, then come back and decide, well, how hard was that to solve? Therefore, now you can answer this question in an intelligent way because they've done the research and they've tried it themselves.
I'm going to show you 2 different videos. The first one is different groups of students in my class. There's going to be 6 different groups here. You'll see different design, different way it looks. And I thought it was really good that I wasn't there because I couldn't prompt them in one way or another. And once they were all done, we talked about it. We came up with one design as a group. And that's the prototype I have here. This is simple washcloth, microfiber cloth, and then in the middle there's a nylon pot scrubber. Every group found out real fast that oil sticks to styrofoam. The only problem with that is styrofoam is not good for the environment. This group failed first attempt. They were like, grab the cup, touch the oil. I was like, you guys are done. And he didn't do the first time. And it's interesting to see that. And I gave them this pan before he did everything. And I found it interesting that none of them made the cup smaller. One group, and it was only because I kind of said, hey, you should think about your size. Think about the size of this aspect. Your cup's the same size as your bowl. Is it going to work? And I gave them everything that was on that list, and she handed out some design briefs. I gave them everything on the list, and I told them, And at the bottom it says students can bring whatever they want. So I allowed them to bring whatever they wanted as long as it was appropriate. I got a bunch of emails the day I was gone. One group wanted to bring a power drill, and by the time I had answered the question, they're like, "Never mind, we don't want it anymore." They ended up bringing an RC car, and then they just abandoned that idea completely because it wasn't working the way they wanted. A few design changes, and it would have worked, I think. This group's whole premise was trying to skim the top. And you'll see when I did the group design, and I'll show you that video in a minute, but I just caked the pan full of oil pretty much. And it's just oil and cocoa powder.
And this actually calls for a clear glass pan, which is a little pricey. So John chose to use the 99-cent aluminum pan, which I think makes more sense. Although there's something about the clear glass pan because it calls for you to use the blue food coloring and see the ocean and all that.
So
maybe they could see it from the side.
This
too.
was our class design. I sped it up so you can see the oil change. Maybe not.
I would think with a clear glass pan, you could also see the depth of the oil too, if it sinks on down.
If you had one pan for the whole class to use, this, if you broke them out into individual groups of experiment, and then the end result, get a big glass pan, that's all do what we think the best design might be.
I spread this up, but you can see the oil start to change viscosity here. It's starting to just get real thin. You can really see it right here. It's just starting to spread out like a honeycomb. And this is
room temperature water.
This is room temperature water. It's 700 milliliters. I measured it because I went back and measured most of them and said I wanted them to lose as little water as possible. And the design we finally come up with at the end actually lost, I think, like 10 millimeters of water. This is the oil we started with, and I think I dumped half my oil in there. We have a submersible pump. This would change. We talked about this in the end. This would change. This is just the way we did it. We did it in two pans. We did a dirty oil pan and a clean pan. If you're working this, you basically take a ship and then run over the edges, pump it through the filter, but we didn't have that at the moment. So this was the last group idea we had. So, and actually it's right here. You can actually see there's several stages. You have your first filter, and you can actually see the oil. I didn't clean it. And you can see the oil here. But all we did was use nylon pot scrubbers. I think we got probably about 95% of the oil out as a class. And you can see the different stages in here. This was the top that caught the most oil. And it went in order. So the farther down it went, less oil. And then I double used this. So this looks like it's dirtier, but we used two things. We started out with styrofoam. The first time we did this prototype, and I didn't have this video here. But you can see you can kind of see right there, the water's pretty clear compared to where it was. I used this twice. The first time we used styrofoam, well, I talked to the kids about how environmentally unfriendly that would be. So I went back to nylon pot scrubbers. Not saying this is more friendly, environmentally friendly, but we talked about the aspect of styrofoam, and there's no good way to get rid of it.
With that, is it the material or the design that makes it such a great filter? I mean, is it because it's somewhat porous, or is it? To tell you the truth, I can't, without really going into it and not looking, I think a lot of it is the oil sticks a little better than the water, so the water will flow through and the oil sticks. And then once you get a little oil sticking, the rest of it starts to stick. We didn't use styrofoam, but the first time this caught most of it. There was just a film of oil on top of this when I went through the first time. But then when we changed it to this, there's no extra oil, and we added a second cloth. So we made modifications from the first step to the second time. Our water didn't get much clearer, but we felt like we were more environmentally friendly with our solution.
And this one that you're showing us is the end result of everybody's.
Yeah, that's when we put all the class together and said, here's our next solution.
So some of the things that we already talked about with changes would be to use the Socratic idea with giving kids different roles in some kind of an oil situation and having them take that mindset of that person who owns the company, an environmentalist, someone who has a business on the coastal shores that is being ruined by this, a fisherman, someone who owns land, things like that, and letting them have that Socratic discussion and figure out, that there are many sides to every situation. We also thought adding the current issues and those that are close to home was important in this unit. The map making component that John already talked about, and the water temperature that he talked about too, Venn diagram, and then infographic as a presentation mode. If they have been writing essays along the way in the other units, that would be another way to still do the research, still present the information, still offer the comparison, contrast, or what was learned from each episode, or even, in demonstrating their models. That infographic serves as an easy way to still present information without writing. That's all we.
There's assessment and rubrics involved. Like I was talking to her, I think I've changed the rubric a little bit. Because what I like to do at the end of each lesson is I'll teach everything, and then I like to kind of a project base. Here's your assignment. Here's the rubric. Can you meet everything I want? I'm not here to answer questions. We did that the last week. This is your project. I'm your boss. Can you do it? Yes or no? And then they have a grading scale. You meet the grading scale. They don't meet the grading scale. So basically Friday's work day. Here it is. Create the product. Let's see what happens.
And you had these in groups of how many?
These were in groups of 3. I had two 8th grade classes that did it. I didn't show all the videos, but a few of them. And I found this, and I kind of ripped into both classes a little bit about taking the easy way out a couple times. That was one of my concerns. Was at some stages of this, they're going to do something like, man, that's too hard. It's too much work. And I had a couple groups that did, and I kind of ripped into both classes about not taking the easy way out. I won't say I was the nicest person, but I was like, you got one group that did everything they could, tried to. One group brought a filter and made their own filter, brought their own glass, and they basically brought a lamp fixture that goes over the light bulb and put a filter on the bottom, brought their own pump. And one group went all out, and the rest of them kind of did it so-so, and then there's 2 groups that kind of just like whatever.
Well, and I think that's typical of project-based learning. Some kids prefer to just sit and get, and these kinds of projects don't allow for that. You have to get involved and you have to do the thinking.
I was actually observed one day for keep for my evaluation during this, and my principal noticed the same thing. You got kids that aren't really involved in some classes, got real involved, and you got kids that just kind of sat there and were part of it and didn't really participate. She noticed that, and I thought it was interesting that she noticed it. I noticed it too.
So how would you make sure that they were more engaged the next time you do it? Have you thought of anything that?
Kicking in the ass.
Well, I think presenting the rubric along with the project at the beginning, because I think on your rubric you're going to have.
Well, my 7th graders were freaking out because I gave them a project in the first week that was worth twice as many points as they got whole first semester, whole first quarter. So they're all like, "Ooh." And it's one of these projects, and I said, the one question I'm answering is it the right size? I'm not answering, does it look good? I'm not answering, can you meet the requirements? Because this is basically your summation of the whole first 9 weeks. Can you do it? Can you regurgitate the information I gave you and not flush it?
Well, and I think if you're using this as an entire lesson, I think there are going to be kids that have different strengths. I think some of your kids are going to be your organizers, or they're going to be better in your webbing. I think some of your kids are going to be your more comfortable in writing, in your proposal. Some of them are going to be the hands-on that are better at the designing. I think as long as the group can prove that everyone has participated and done a part. If the problem is when you get one group where nobody wants to do a darn thing, that to me is troublesome.
And I think you could lead into this whole aspect of all these lessons. After the first unit, you're gonna realize, most of the time we already do realize who are the stronger writers, who are the stronger thinkers, who are the stronger makers, inventors. And then eventually you're gonna have group leaders, and you're gonna be able to say, hey, you need one of each person. Make sure you basically turn it into a draft, or you hate to do that, but or you could draft it up. I make them draw popsicle sticks. That's your partner. We got to learn to work with each other. They're not going to like somebody they work with in the future, so they might as well get used to it now.
Any other questions? Good job, guys.
while Cody's setting up, I don't even know how old this thing is. There's no date in here. I just know that I don't ever remember not having it. It's that old. So I'm going to pass this around. When we go over the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo space programs, it's really neat so that the kids can actually put faces and rockets and stuff to the pictures. And like I said, just take care of it. Like I said, I've had it for probably 40 years. You want to take a look at it? It's got pictures in there I've never seen in any other magazines or anywhere. It's a National Geographic. So it's pretty cool. The kids really enjoy looking at that every year.
And how great that it ties in here, huh?
Yeah. But it's got some really good pictures.
I missed which unit lesson you guys have.
6.
It's 6. It's on the, if I can get this to go.
Unit 6, lesson 2.
2, yeah.
Yeah, 6-2.
You guys talked about water and the we talked about live binder or Google side.
We talked about doing a Google.
We'll have a tab for each one and then we go on. Or even if we had all the shared drive, where you can go in and you get big suggestions off to the side.
We're talking about a lot of Google different aspects, whether it be a Google chat that we try to set up on a certain.
Yeah, but looking at about chat, it's a chat. I would rather have an aspect where you can look at it and you go and make notes, and you can use your notes and not use your notes. That way you can actually see it and not just the chat. If you miss the chat, you kind of miss the chat. You know what I mean?
What was the other thing Chris, we were talking about? We were talking about.
I tried and
Somebody suggested something else about it, and I said, we definitely need to look at something. We just can't put everything out for EBD online, because that's what Clear wanted to put it on, ESSDACK site. We can't do that. So it has to be, you can't put all the lessons out there for any teacher to want to see. She wants to be able to put pictures of different things we've done, which that's not a problem, but, we can't put the curriculum out there. So,
basically, instead of making, you're gonna put a modification page. So a uniform lesson, modifications, possibilities.
and that's what we were thinking, that either something that you guys would all know. You could-
I know where your stuff is at. So I'm just closing it.
Yeah, I was gonna make that work. Yeah, everybody can share theirs. Be great. And that might be definitely a Google Drive thing.
Okay, so we had, like we said, Unit 6, Lesson 2. It's still with the creating space. Unit 6 talks about creating a space exploration infrastructure. It kind of goes along with what you guys had. But this one starts talking more about launch vehicles and Earth departure stages. So it talks about actually leaving Earth and kind of going to the moon that way. The big idea is the Constellation is one of NASA's new projects. It's to go and actually set up a base on the moon, how they would launch it, how they would travel to the moon. And then they also talked about wanting to start aiming towards sending people to Mars now. So here's the standards and benchmarks. It's kind of the national standards still. Kind of show you. These are just a few of the objectives. I'll show you more. There's quite a few of them in this one. For the objectives for this, I'll show you on the website here on the portal. Assessments, there's the true false, there's the constructed response, there's participation. We kind of added the participation in there a little bit. The one-page data sheet will kind of show a little bit more in depth with these display questions and presentations. So there's rubrics for most of these on the portal. So just a couple of resources, text, anything kind of like Bob wrote that book, has that. You can look it up. Pamphlets, nasa.gov was really good. YouTube had some really good videos. Some things to help them kind of with research, what to look for. We put the Mercury program, the Gemini program, Apollo program, Apollo 11. Just a few things to help them be able to search and make it a little easier. The lesson prep, here's some of the tools and materials you'll need. Computer with internet's the big one, presentation software, printers, computer projector, and just kind of anything the students wanted to design a poster or something at the end. The resources, here's some of the resources. Here's one the students will read on the first day or second day. I'll kind of go through here by day what we would do.
They will actually read this, and it kind of leads it into a discussion that you'll have with the students. And so this is kind of a cool, kind of gives them a little bit of background, kind of why they want to go to Mars and kind of why they want to do the exploration of the moon and to Mars. So, and kind of just gives them a quick background of the space program as well. Here's another one. Here's the actual new moon lander that they're talking about using and designing. And so it talks a lot more with what they're designing now. And so it kind of gives them a picture and of an idea of what you're talking about and what you're discussing. This is on the portal as well. Here's the new pictures of the new actual launch vehicles that they're using. It's the Ares 1 is this one, and then the Ares 5 is this. You're kind of going to a little bit more in depth on the couple days. But what it is Ares 1 would be the personnel launch vehicle. These would be launched at the same time or relatively close. And what it is, they would, the Ares 1 is the crew and kind of things more lightweight, kind of just gets them. And then the Ares 5 is quite a bit larger. It's used for cargo almost, and they'll actually depart, and then they will meet up in space and then move on to wherever they're going, whether it's the moon or Mars, or it just kind of depends on where their mission's going. So just kind of, like I said, kind of gives the kids an idea. Here it kind of explains it a little bit on why they're doing it the way they are and how it works. So. And then the last one. Kind of a cool, just little picture here. It shows the kind of the past to present. We have the Saturn V, which was all Apollo, the space shuttle. There's the Ares 1 and the Ares 5. And then it also kind of gives it a reference of how large these actually are. It's the Statue of Liberty and kind of gives you an example, kind of gives the students a reference of how large these actually are. It gives them an idea that way. So. And it kind of goes on, it explains the Ares products a little bit more, building a powerful foundation. So basically kind of talk about they want to use the moon as almost a practice to go back and try to go to Mars. So they're looking at trying to start these. They want to launch the Ares with a manned mission to Mars or to the moon again before 2020. That's kind of their goal. So. Here we kind of have the days broken up. This one, it's kind of a lot of more, makes the kids think. There wasn't a lot of design or anything with it. Just kind of wants to get them knowing what NASA's working on. The first thing that as you do is show a video, and everything has to kind of be shown or worked after you show the video. And so we're actually going to show the video. It's about 6 minutes long. Kind of gives it just a little bit of an idea of what the students are going to kind of have to be thinking about. So. This is on the portal. It gives you just a YouTube video. It just kind of makes them think of what they need to start thinking about before
It is time for America to take the next steps. Today, I announce a new plan to explore space and extend a human presence across our solar system. We will begin the effort quickly, using existing programs and personnel. We'll make steady progress. One mission, one voyage, one landing at a time. Our first goal is to complete the International Space Station by 2010. We will finish what we have started. We will meet our obligations to our 15 international partners on this project. We will focus our future research aboard the station on the long-term effects of space travel on human biology. research on board the station and here on Earth will help us better understand and overcome the obstacles that limit exploration. Through these efforts, we will develop the skills and techniques necessary to sustain further space exploration. To meet this goal, we will return the space shuttle to flight as soon as possible, consistent with safety concerns and the recommendations of the Columbia Accident Investigation Board. The shuttle's chief purpose over the next several years will be to help finish assembly of the International Space Station. Our second goal is to develop and test a new spacecraft, the Crew Exploration Vehicle, by 2008, and to conduct the first manned mission no later than 2014. The Crew Exploration Vehicle will be capable of ferrying astronauts and scientists to the space station after the shuttle is retired. But the main purpose of this spacecraft will be to carry astronauts beyond our orbit to other worlds. Our third goal is to return to the moon by 2020 as the launching point for missions beyond. Beginning no later than 2008, we will send a series of robotic missions to the lunar surface to research and prepare for future human exploration. Using the Crew Exploration Vehicle, we will undertake extended human missions to the moon as early as 2015, with the goal of living and working there for increasingly extended periods of time. Returning to the moon is an important step for our space program. Establishing an extended human presence on the moon could vastly reduce the cost of further space exploration, making possible ever more ambitious missions. Also, the moon is home to abundant resources. Its soil contains raw materials that might be harvested and processed into rocket fuel or breathable air. We can use our time on the moon to develop and test new approaches and technologies and systems that will allow us to function in other more challenging environments. The moon is a logical step toward further progress and achievement. With the experience and knowledge gained on the moon, we will then be ready to take the next steps of space exploration, human missions to Mars and to worlds beyond. Robotic missions will serve as trailblazers, the advanced guard to the unknown. Probes, landers, and other vehicles of this kind continue to prove their worth, sending spectacular images and vast amounts of data back to Earth. Yet the human thirst for knowledge ultimately cannot be satisfied by even the most vivid pictures or the most detailed measurements. We need to see and examine and touch for ourselves. And only human beings are capable of adapting to the inevitable uncertainties posed by space travel. As our knowledge improves, we'll develop new power generation, propulsion, life support, and other systems that can support more distant travels. We do not know where this journey will end, yet we know this: human beings are headed into the cosmos. The vision I outlined today is a journey, not a race. We choose to explore space because doing so improves our lives and lifts our national spirit. So let us continue the journey.
so that's how you kind of started off. The kids have to see that. It's just kind of one of those, it lists a couple goals that you will need here kind of following the days. So then the teacher will hand out the student resource. So that's the one, that was the first one I showed you, where they will read through it then. And then what they do is they're going to break them into pairs. And you have to discuss the goals. I think we actually have that were in the video. Here are just a few of the goals that we came up with, and kind of, I think they're actually on the portal as well. What the students do is they have to, they can kind of research these and kind of make their partner, they have to decide which one is most important to them. So you'll give them a few minutes, kind of research and decide, and then they actually have to defend it. They have to get up, present to the class, this is the order we put these goals, and this is why. Where they said the biggest part is you have to make sure that they can defend why they put them in that order. And so it's one of those, they kind of have to do a little bit of research with it and to kind of see which way they want to go. Here it says they record, define, and present the rankings. Then what we have to do is on the kind of still the first days, we would have them start looking into research kind of the past programs. So they could pick one of Mercury, Gemini, or Apollo, and they have to create a student fact sheet. We just said 10 to make it a little easier for them instead of trying to come up with a full page. We do actually have kind of examples. We went ahead and kind of made some to kind of show what they were, and I'll let Bob kind of discuss these. So
it was interesting because looking around, I'm probably the oldest in here. I can remember living through all this. For you guys, it's secondhand information. So that's where I really enjoyed going back and looking up all this stuff, because it was stuff that I lived through, but yet I had forgotten so much of it because I haven't taught space science forever. It was actually President Eisenhower, I don't know if you knew that really started the space program. Most people think it was John F. Kennedy, that Kennedy wanted us to get to the moon. Eisenhower is the one that really started the space program. It was also interesting that there were 7 original astronauts, and number 11, I'd never heard of Donald Slayton. Had anybody ever heard of Donald Slayton? He was originally scheduled to be the 2nd astronaut to fly into space, but he had a heart problem, and he never could fly on Mercury or Gemini, but he finally did get into space on Apollo, which I found was interesting. Like I said, never heard of it. The first animal for the Americans to put up in space was a squirrel monkey named Gordo. He drowned. Another thing I found, somebody talked about dogs in space and monkeys and whatever. They actually sent 5, they call them pocket mice, into outer space. And they had names, Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum, and Fooey. I'd never heard of that before. And I just thought that was so neat. And 4 out of the 5 survived. I never could find out which one died, but their names were Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum, and Fooey. Gemini twins was because now you had 2 astronauts going into space instead of 1. It was interesting just to find out, again, like number 9, they ate 3 freeze-dried meals a day, went to the bathroom using hoses and bags. And I didn't know this. They cleaned house just by opening up the hatch. They would put on their suits, and if they wanted to clean house, they would just open up the hatch and let things blow into outer space. I'd never heard of that before. So this was really interesting to me to do the research on these 3 different programs. The Apollo was the latest program. You guys are probably everybody in here seen Apollo 13. That movie is pretty interesting. I found it interesting on number 7. It said the Apollo 11 computers had less processing power than a cell phone. If you look back in 1969, and I can remember being in school when there was no technology. Maybe some of you guys remember that, but there was virtually no technology. And to me, it's just amazing that we could go to the moon in 1969 with basically primitive technology that we had. Well, it was just a lot of fun to research all of this. I didn't realize Apollo 12 was struck by lightning twice when it took off. I'd never heard of that before. if you ever knew Alan B. Shepard, if you like golf, he hit a golf ball on the moon. They guesstimated that it went about 2.5 miles when he hit it, and that the ball was in the air roughly 70 seconds. So when I was researching this, I just kind of wanted to go just kind of a different route and just talk about things that I'd never heard of before. I didn't remember, kind of like little interesting tidbits. Again, like the Phi, Fo, Fum, and Fui.
So this is yours, not on that site?
No, this was ones we made.
Yeah, I researched all of these.
Yeah.
These are all my facts that I found. And just thought that, again, that they were just more than just, like my first one I did on the first program, Gemini, I just kind of did like flight 1, flight 2, flight 3, and it's kind of boring. So as I went through, I started picking out things I thought were just a lot more fun and interesting. And I probably researched 7 or 8 hours just going through hundreds and hundreds of articles just to find things that just weren't bland, you know. So I actually enjoyed doing research on this.
So that was kind of day one. You'd let them research it. You'd have the rest of the class that kind of research, make their fact sheets. Started day 2, we'd have the students actually present their 10 facts. So then their partner would get up and they'd have to, show their 10 facts they found. We thought if you wanted to kind of add it, you could also add a site page in where they actually found it, kind of tie in a little bit of cross-curricular with that. So day 2, this is where it starts getting to a lot just discussion and researching. It talks a lot more. We'll go, and I'll show you more as we go and get into it onto the portal. Has predetermined kind of questions for you to kind of ask students, get them to kind of research what it would be kind of to get the discussion going kind of that way. So then you start going into the moon, the constellation program. This is where you'll start showing them the pictures of the new ones, kind of explaining to them what the plan is, kind of reference the video that you showed. Depending on where you're at on time, day 2, you can end it with the 10-question true or false quiz, or you can start it on day 3. On this one, day 3, we said what we would have them do is they would actually pick a constellation vehicle or module. Their pick, there's more than one of them. They conduct research and create a display or presentation. So they'll actually make a presentation over it, says this is kind of what it's for, how it's used, why they decided to go with this. And you can use the rubric to kind of show you the difference. So here's the portal. It says it takes about 3 hours. We were probably pretty close to that. We decided that on maybe a 4th day, you could have them actually present their presentations or their displays that they made for the constellation vehicles. Just kind of, doesn't really say they need to, just kind of make a display. Here's kind of the highlights, snapshots, the standards and the benchmarks. So you kind of see the objectives. Like I said, I just put down not even half of them. There's quite a few. The assessment, here's the assessments and the rubrics for the 1-page information sheet, optional class participation, display and presentation rubric. The resources, here's where you have good websites to do your research on. The NASA.gov has just a lot of information about everything. The YouTube videos on here as well. And so it kind of just shows where to look for information on the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs. So here's the lesson plan. Here's the, like it says, teacher video. Here it is from YouTube, just to copy and paste that. It'll take you right there. It kind of talks about the goals of the program and why they're coming back and redoing it. So here's for the teacher discussion. There's a teacher resource PowerPoint. We couldn't find it to help with the discussion, but like I said, we couldn't find it anywhere. But here's just the things you'll kind of just talk about. It's the administration, the ORN crew exploration. That's what the new one is. The Aries 1, the Aries 5, the Earth departure stages where I said they kind of meet up in space and then have to kind of go from there to wherever they're going. Teacher leads a discussion on the relative size of NASA's past, present. That's that picture where I showed you and had the Saturn V rocket, the space shuttle, the Aries 1, Aries 5, and the Statue of Liberty kind of shows the size difference. Here's where the students will actually select one of the constellation vehicles or modules. Students conduct research and create a display presentation explaining the functioning of the vehicle or module they chose. The teacher reviews the rubric to be used. We said that would probably be more of a let them work the third day. They can kind of bring whatever they want, or we can present or have things for them. But it just, they're kind of making it look like they want to show and then kind of explain how it would work. So we kind of talked about, we let them kind of bring things if they wanted to, and then they also have to be kind of, where this would fall off, like the rocket boosters or whatever, to kind of show, or the fuel tanks to kind of show how it actually worked. They'd have to make like a kind of a working model if they decided to do that. And then lesson prep, and then here are the supporting files. I showed you all some of these. Show this one. There's no longer a website for it. It won't take you to one, but it's just the pictures. I think I showed you that one.
The website doesn't work on that one?
The ones that are underneath, let me see. I think it was this one. It still brings up the photo of it. Yeah, it brings up the photo, but there's a website underneath. It won't go to that anymore. And so it just kind of shows us what the lander would look like. And then I think it was,
And that was the
lunar lander,
2.3.
2.3. And I think it was this one, the 2.5. Yep. And then here it shows the actual stages of how to get to the moon. This was the other one that the internet site on the bottom didn't work anymore. So 2.5. And so it actually shows the stages of how they would meet up and how they would get there and how they would get back. So. Any questions?
I'm not a science teacher, so I don't do space. But is anybody else concerned that the most current resources are 2008? And I would want kids to get into a discussion as to have these plans been followed through? If so, why not? I mean, from my understanding, budgets are cut and none of this happened or is happening.
So much of it now has gone to private companies. Private companies are doing probably more than NASA is at this point in time. So I think they're just kind of in a state of flux right now as to exactly what they're going to do from everything I've read.
And our commitment in that video is to the other 15 nations that were partnerships in space exploration. What are they doing? Right.
As a matter of fact, I just saw the other day that India just sent their first satellite to the moon. They're going to the moon. So there's not a whole lot of work going on with other countries. Other countries are just kind of doing their own thing. And yeah, it's kind of a mess right now, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, I read in there at one time where you had 400,000 people at one time were working on the Apollo program, 400,000. And right now, it's really hard to find exactly what we're working on, because I was trying to look all that stuff up, and it's almost non-existent data right now.
I have a daughter-in-law that works for Lockheed Martin. So NASA has subcontracted all of this out. So there's tremendous resources out there, but they're not necessarily directly through NASA. So she speaks all over and Skypes with kids and as she's working on.
I was going to say,
That is the private companies, but they're all under the umbrella of NASA. So NASA is still controlling it, but it's private companies.
So it was not a real big project here unless you did.
No, they just said it's a lot more get the kids to realize what the goal is and kind of what they're using now and what their idea is from what we could tell. There wasn't, like, the last thing it said was if they wanted to, and it didn't even, I don't even think it talked much about it. It said if they wanted to do like a display or presentation over the new modules or vehicles, that's about it. So, now the extension here, this is all. So a lot of it was teacher leads discussion. Then extension here, it says students select one of the Constellation vehicles and modules, creates a display or presentation.
One thing I was going to do right before Christmas, I'm actually teaching space science this year for the first time in forever, was have the kids make, I call it a tin can rocket. Anything that they want to bring from home where they can make any type of a rocket and use their imagination to have that rocket do different things, so they can make like their own lunar lander. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they come up with, because this is the first year I've taught space science. And so that's one thing that I really wanted to do, let them use their imagination, because right before Christmas, they don't want to do anything anyway. So I'm anxious to see what happens there.
So you'll utilize this?
Yes.
Really heavily to
Yes.
do that.
For that one, yes.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
We have Unit 4, Lesson 4. There's the portal. And it does, I mean, this is the last unit in Lesson 4, and it does say that this one is sequential. So it talks about everything that they have learned in Lessons 1, 2, and 3. So we didn't spend a whole lot of time going through all of those, but obviously you would need to in order to make this be very effective. So this one is using design and creativity to help others by building a Goldberg device. So we went through the 5E lesson plan. That's kind of how we're going to present this. We start off with giving the instructions for making a sandwich. And when I talk to some of the other teachers, I teach 7th and 8th grade science, and we have language arts across the hall. They do teaching a sandwich in their class when they're getting ready to make speeches. So I do think you have to be careful that you're not stepping on somebody else's project that they've been doing for 10 years. So we would need to coordinate the timing of this so that they could do the speech steps and we could use the making the sandwich. And the point of this is to have them give instructions for making a sandwich, but then add steps. You know, Goldberg device. You try to make as many steps as you can to complete a task.
And how could you make it better or faster or?
So, you know, we talked about which side of the bread do you want to be up. You know, check the face of the bread. And there is a worksheet that goes through, but it's just a simple worksheet. And it just goes through step 1, step 2, step 3, and you write down all of your steps. So that's an easy thing to do. So have that discussion about, okay, you ended up with 10 steps. Now make the same sandwich and make 15 steps. Encourage them to do that. Then we would probably show them some sort of video, and the site gives a lot of examples of that. So Sarah, I'll let you.
Oh, maybe. There it goes. And these websites were on the portal. There's the rubegoldberg.com, okgo.net, there's edheads and other things. So worksheet 2 that goes with it, they kind of help with research, what kind of things you would research. Who was Rube Goldberg? How did he become famous? Look at 3 different designs and describe how you believe Rube Goldberg inventions might be used today. So
I'm going to show just a little bit of that.
the clip.
And I'm not sure all of my kids would have actually seen these. You know, the ones that like this type of activity, they will have watched OK Go or one of those sets.
Or if they watch TV, a lot of commercials.
We would probably have them watch, this one's fairly long, we're gonna watch all of it, but
Back when my high school actually helped do this.
and in our school, we start doing these in 5th grade, so the kids will have had some background, but that's not necessarily true. Then the lesson goes through what was the fun part of this device and where the parts that probably would be, if you've ever built them, you know, they'll work 9 times out of 10, but then the 10th time it doesn't work. Or they'll only work 1 time out of 10. So we would probably have them go back through and watch that clip again with the list of questions. Where were the parts that you see the most danger in it not working? And where are the parts, do a little bit of analysis of just what they're seeing. So they start to think about, oh yeah, I want to have this, you know, pendulum swing and knock down my tower, but what are the chances of that working? They need to do a little bit of that before they start designing.
And going back to that big idea of making the process better or any way of improving it.
And that is, all of these are written in the lesson. All of these are in our lessons.
Yeah, it was what she just. Some extensions, some topics that we found, maybe you want them to crush cans with their end product or drop a bottle in the recycling bin. Kind of another thing with this was to improve your community. So recycling would be kind of the thing. Maybe turning off the light, shutting the door. Some things you might want to think about, are you going to allow them to use fire? Like using a candle to burn the string or something like that. Like what number of steps, 5, 10, whatever. Using electricity and batteries. Using like a school junk box, whatever you find in closets, or bringing things from home. Maybe the size and maybe like where are you going to store these as they're working on them. So.
This is designed to be a 4-hour project. I do a lot of projects with my kid in the intro to physical science class. There is no way this would be a four-day period when you have to actually transport something. And I'm lucky that I have a big storage area and a huge supply room. And over the years, I've just collected every kind of material you can think. But I always let kids bring things from home, at least on some of the projects. On some of them, they have a junk box, and each team has their own junk box. So you could do it any way that you wanted to, but there are things to think about is where you're going to store these things from day to day if you don't have access to a place.
So you said 4 hours is not enough?
I don't think that's enough.
So what time would you allow?
I would say double that, but that's the way I work in my room. They're doing a project right now where cars run down a ramp and carry raw eggs, and because we finished our unit on momentum and inertia and motion, and they've already spent 4 days, you know, with the drawing and the plans and the material list, and we've already spent that much time. So, and we'll show some of the paperwork that goes with this one.
It does give you one rubric there that you can base off of yours, or you can come up with their own.
I have that one that shows it has the graph paper.
That's this one.
Okay. Now this one goes through the whole process. And the point of the lesson is to improve your community. That gets a little bit hard sometimes on figuring on a device that will improve your community. And you're also supposed to be green, which means using recycled materials. That makes it a little bit more complicated too. And I guess, you know, I have a little bit of problem with you be green, use only recycled material, but rolls of tape or rolls of saran wrap and all of those things then that have to be recycled afterwards. So I think you have to kind of work that out for yourself, how you're going to get that into be green, improve your community, and fit your own personal beliefs. But that's basically ours. Anybody have any questions? Okay, thanks.
I can go next.
Oh, ours is, what number do you have?
I have 4-2.
We've got 4-3. Do you want to just work backwards?
Whatever.
I don't care. I
Go for it.
No.
Go for it.
I just tell me what to do. I don't care. I go back to my seat. I don't care.
You're 4-3. So you come right.
Going backwards makes a lot of sense.
I just said I could go back and sit down. Oh, come on, arm wrestle. Let's see. Energy or
While she sets up her computer, I told her I was going to do this in my classroom last week, and so I didn't get it done because I didn't spend an entire one single day in my classroom last week. The stomach virus is slowly working its way through my family. So, and I'm not blessed. I'm told that due to our paras, or due to our subs, when I'm gone, I'm instructed to give them busy work. So so that's my fault. I was going to do this with the kids, and like I said, I didn't spend a single day in my classroom last week between everybody being sick. So we won't have that information, so, or that example. Attention was there.
We're getting there.
I had it ready to go.
Okay. I have too many Gmail accounts now.
That's all right. Any of you have kids? I'm like, really? Why can't they all get sick at one time? Like, yeah. Why do we have to
space it out?
Yeah, exactly. Like, why do we have to space it out? And they all get sick at the same time. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I think we will let him go.
Okay,
Let him
then
go.
I'm just gonna
Yeah,
leave this up
because
here.
I'm locked out.
Do you mind if I
Sorry.
leave this up here? I guess you're going. We're locked out, so we're gonna try to figure it out. Sorry. That's okay. I'm not.
Okay, I had lesson 4-2, and to be honest with you guys, I wasn't super impressed with it. But I'm sure it has its purpose, and especially if it goes along with lesson 4, 4. So I didn't make a slideshow or anything, but I just kind of wanted to show you a couple of things that they had 3 assignments, I guess. The first one was to design a wheelchair that would help a disabled student, that would have a storage device, and I thought it was a pretty good way to get the kids kind of involved. I don't know, we don't have any kids in wheelchairs at our school right now. We only have 120 kids in our 120 kids in our district, so we don't really have a big need for that. But I just kind of went through the engineering design process, and I'm sure there's a lot of different ways to do it. One way you could have just get kids the sizes you could have, if you had chairs in your room, you could have them, measure the chair, get some dimensions, and go through that process. If there was a wheelchair, sometimes theater might have a wheelchair for, I don't know, for something, but that's just kind of the 2 things that I went through, and I tried to, in my mind, create something that was again, they don't actually design it, they just kind of put it on paper. And then another thing they had was a DVD of Mothers of Invention on the History Channel, and you have to buy it. Well, it's not even on the website anymore, so that's a no-go. And I tried YouTubing Mothers of Invention History Channel. I tried everything. I'm like, I feel like I'm always the best at finding stuff, but I couldn't find anything. And so the worksheet does have a couple of names on there, and you could try to search some of those names. I think it's kind of maybe good just to help people see that it's not just, you know, men that are behind the engineering deal, whatever, if that is true. I don't think it is, but, you know, it just kind of gives some people some background on some other people who designed some stuff. And I think there was actually some really good ones. But the main unit was about designing a way to, economic way to sharpen a pencil. And the, let's see here. There wasn't a lot of, the resources weren't very good. Yeah, design an economic way to sharpen a pencil. And a couple of the things that I ran into, wasn't quite sure what to think about it. So obviously a great way to sharpen a pencil is using a knife. So you can't really use that. You can't bring a knife to school, whatever. So the thing I had to do is I had to attach to a binder some way. And so I just went out and I bought a 3-pack of pencil sharpeners. And if I were to do it with a class, I didn't do it with my class, I would have them, or give them like a pencil sharpener and then think of a way to come up with it. And I had to wrap my mind around this one because I could not figure out a way to do this and without making a mess. And so had to be made out of recycled materials. Then they go through the engineering design process, and then the grading criteria as far as, you know, evaluating it, the rubric was an oral presentation, which I think kind of goes along with that lesson 4.4. And so the rubric was for grading that. And so and it's got everything on here. So what I did was I just went through the engineering design process in my book. And so what I did was I got done with a bike ride. I was up at Wilson Lake. I'm on a mountain bike, and I brought chocolate milk to drink and a little school carton. That's what I steal. I don't steal them, but I use them. And so I drink that after my workouts, and I had nothing to eat, and I was so hungry, but I had some sunflower seeds, and so I started eating my sunflower seeds, and I still had my pencil sharpener in that same bag, trying to think of what to do. Well, I ended up coming up with the idea, you know, I was like, can I use a pop can? Could I use, I don't know, a lot of different ways. I couldn't think of anything clean. But then I was like, well, I was spitting my sunflower seeds into my milk carton after I drank. I was like, well, what if I could do the opposite thing? And so what I did was, I don't know why this isn't in order. Oh, that's why. So this is my materials. I got some adhesive glue, pencil sharpener, and my sunflower seed bag. And what I did was I just glued it on the inside of the bag. And this was good because it's got a Ziploc bag, and I just glued it right in there, and I pressed it down to make sure it stick. The only thing I had a problem was making it stick. I used a Q-tip to try to glue it. And then what I did is I just put it right here, attached into my notebook. And that was great. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can put it in here or wherever. But for that case, it worked well for me. And it was just one of those things was, if I didn't have that bag of sunflower seeds, I never would have thought of that. And so it was kind of just what I had at the moment. So there's a lot of different things, you know, kids can use. If you rummage through the recycle bin, I'm sure there's a lot of ways of doing it. But just the one thing you got to be careful of is the pencil shavings. it's a big mess. All that graphite gets everywhere. So that worked out for me, but who knows? I didn't have the kids do it. So this is right. The resources is just, they just kind of go through designs. It just wasn't really anything great. The mother's invention wasn't there, but I don't know. You could fly through this. It says 4 hours. You could probably spend 2 hours on it, maybe 3 with the design. So, but it was an okay one in my opinion. But that was it. I went through it fast. So I was it 15 minutes.
There was no intention for them to design something that would actually sharpen it. It's more
Right.
receptacle for the.
I think you could do it that way, but I would just.
Then it's dangerous.
I think it would be dangerous. I mean, the only thing I could think of would be, and I looked. Some people, they took off the cap of the eraser on a pencil and they use that. I don't know. I would just give them a pencil sharpener and go from there. Otherwise, I was like, you could try sharpening with a can of some sort, but you get like a tin can that might be a little bit more sturdier than an aluminum can, but I don't know. Any questions? So when you're doing that one, I would just give them a pencil sharpener and have them go from there.
And that would be something on that light bulb that I would recommend you guys go and say, this doesn't seem like it's relatively safe for our children. The concept of creating a holder or somehow to keep it in-house with person and make those suggestions and feedback. We're gonna do that, but the more they hear it, the better they're gonna come back and help that.
The other thing about that was they were supposed to use it for a week and then try to see if they could sell it to someone else or think of a way to market it. That was the other thing. So they actually would use it for a week.
The kids use mechanical pencil.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really just not even relevant.
You could get in. Well, yeah, it probably isn't. But if you get if you think of ways that a pencil sharpener works or something like that, you get something. You never know what kids can come up with, but I don't know. They're supposed to use it for a week. So, anything else? Okay, you girls ready?
Tag team is back to you guys.
That's it, really. I didn't know that.
Okay, we'll try this again.
Do a brief intro what it was about.
Yeah, so kind of what this is about is basically they want kids to understand the importance of pictures along with written instruction. So the importance of having both to try to explain or clearly express an idea, and then take it, I guess, to a more advanced step that, okay, this is how maybe you would just sketch it on a piece of paper, but then how would you sketch it using graph paper, and then how would you sketch it to a 3D image? How we did the PowerPoint was we kind of started it out as this is what they would do. So presenting it, this is what you're going to see if you go to the website, and then we followed it with these are the few things that we would change.
Mm-hmm. It's a really short lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Probably would take about, they say 2 hours. I think it would be 4 hours, probably.
Yeah.
Almost a week.
Yeah, I could see it just because of the writings that they want you to do.
Right. So the point is to teach them or introduce them to understand why we communicate visually and to learn how to draw 2D and 3D. And we've been through the portal. If I can jump over there real quick. Basically, the portal has these 3 websites, or the 3 documents. The resources that they have are 2 websites, one of which doesn't work. There are no assessments, so it's kind of limited for this lesson, 4.3.
Which one didn't work? Bottom
Um, no, it was going to be the Dyson one, so I had to find a different Dyson website. The one that I found is actually really cool, but their link is just old. Okay, how do I go back? All right. So the first website that they list is the one that works, is kind of a click-through game to teach you how to do orthographic, isometric, and whatever the third one was type of drafting, which is kind of fun. The cursor is a pencil, so you're actually drawing it on the board.
And then it like connects the dots, so you would point where it goes.
Yeah.
This is kind of where they have you start out.
Drawing, and click on the drawing board, and then you have to follow the dots.
And you're trying to draw the shape up in the corner, and so it's
This
trying
right
to teach kids how do you do that, how do you do a 3D. Because some of your students are really going to struggle with that. Maybe not if they're a big art student, but if they don't, they may struggle with that. We also thought that this one did incorporate, if you have an art teacher that's willing to work with you, could incorporate it in cross curriculum with art.
Art or drafting?
Yeah, depends on what you have. We don't have a drafting department, so my only luck would be my art department.
Yeah. The second website, the one that didn't work, is the James Dyson, the vacuum cleaner guy, and he has a foundation for STEM, which is pretty cool. Scroll down. Here's what I found: the teacher resources. You can click here, download some files.
So you found this one yourself?
Yep.
And it actually has STEM challenges.
Yeah. You kind of have to go tinker with the website. Oh, which one was it? They have, I like these posters that you can print off in color talking about the design process, engineering design process. No, no, it doesn't. There's a couple of them. I noticed, here's some of the, okay. Engineering challenge and marble run. Here's the thing that you can download. There, it looks similar to what we did, only they have a time limit of 60 seconds. So I like this just because there's lots of different ideas that could still be modified to be kind of engineering by design.
And that was just one more James Dyson Foundation.
James Dyson Foundation, just, yeah, Google it. .com.
Is it .com? I looked at it.
Is it? Okay.
The advantage with this unit is it does give you a lot of leeway because it doesn't have assessments, doesn't have things like that. But as you guys know, sometimes leeway is good because you get to put your own touch on it. Some days, the last thing you want is something else that you've got to fine tune. And so it just kind of depends, I guess, at the angle or the mood you're in that day when you decide to take this one on.
Yeah, I think Cassie and I agreed. Their lesson is a little weak. There were a lot of things that we would modify. We're going to show you what they did. So their lesson starts out engagement, have a class discussion about what do you need to have before you can have a table or a chair. And they're supposed to lead into this discussion of you have to have drawings. You have to have something to start with. And then you would jump into the explore part of the 5E lesson, which has to do with the Legos.
We kind of said we would basically, we like this, we would just maybe change it up a little bit. But basically, that kids would, you could give them Legos, they would create a structure, and they would have to
a simple structure.
Yeah, nothing complex, and they would have written and then a picture layout. They would have both, or they would have one or just the other. Let me go ahead and explain where we would tweak it here or not. Okay. What we decided, we thought maybe because if you want a true analysis and you let all these different groups make their own structures, what if someone, complexity-wise, it's not really comparable? And so then you may have this group will say, well, yeah, pictures were easier, and this group may say, well, writing was easier, but their structure's not comparable. Does that make sense? So we thought maybe it'd be good to have like a team A,
the A's and B's.
Yeah, an A and a B group, and basically we would provide the structure, and then they would have to, one group would write it.
Instructions for the other group and how to build it.
So I don't know if this makes sense. So imagine there's an A and B, and there's 1, 2, 3. So 1 A's are going to write it. 2 A's are going to draw it. 3 A's are going to write it and draw it. And then they would give it to, like 1A would give it to 1B, the instructions and the Legos, and then they would have to construct it. Group 2A would give it to 2B with the pictures, and they'd have to construct it. And then the final one would get both the pictures and the written instructions. And then at the end, you would, which one was easier?
It's kind of a convoluted lesson. I think we'd have to tinker with it. You're wanting them to get to the point of understanding that having drawings that have pictures for you and written instructions and that go step by step are the best way to, I don't know, create something, I guess, from scratch. But then that leads into, why am I not moving forward? The worksheet. And that was another problem with this lesson is the numbering is all wonky, we thought. So activity sheet 2.1.
Because if you looked under teacher resources, it was labeled, you know, like 2.1, for example. But if you went to student resources, the same worksheet wasn't labeled the same numbers, if that makes sense. So you had to kind of play with that a little bit.
So they would lead into this activity where this is the orthographic projection. You draw the front of the object, bottom left, you draw the top on the top left, and then you draw a side view in the bottom right. I think, and we discussed this, this is where before they do this activity, you probably want to have the art teacher come in and do a little bit of practice on how you do drafting techniques, 3D sketching. Different activity.
Just a hint, you can also, this is a great opportunity to use technology and use Google SketchUp.
True. I have never used Google SketchUp. Have you used it in your class? I feel like I'd have to learn it before they do it, but maybe that's one of those you let them go and they'd probably figure it out faster.
Jess, you did a lot of Google SketchUp.
Ask her about how it's going today in her class. I love that first one.
Oh, that was cruel.
It is a band pop.
Is it?
I've had trouble with it. Oh, a band that gives all these students on at once. And then when it comes time to save your project, half of them were like, oh, shoot.
Well, that's where Autodesk is gonna be a nice addition, having the free parts of that. And I do know that Jorge's did say they are offering Autodesk instruction this upcoming summer. Cleveland and I were talking to them about maybe doing some other things with them when they offer that, or coming here and offering when we do these the next time we offer like this. For 9th and 7th grade, Autodesk is going to be very, very workable as long as you know how to use it.
Right.
So
this is kind of, what was it, they're culminating?
Yeah.
Semi. So after they do this activity, then they go on to this one and they have to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each type of sketch.
Which we kind of felt like, what was how valid was it after you just had them do the activity and you're going to discuss it anyway during the activity? So we kind of felt like this was maybe not valid or redundant and maybe wouldn't go deep enough.
So we decided to cut that one.
Yeah, we felt like you could cut it, and as long as you had appropriate discussion when you had them do the actual activity, they would get that anyway. They would get the advantages and disadvantages.
The final activity that they have is, so after they've learned how to do 3D drawing, you would have different objects set up in your room. Something you choose, a 3-dimensional letter, I'm thinking something Hobby Lobby wise, and then a pencil holder. Obviously you could pick what you want, but then they try and draw it 3-dimensionally, the 3 different views, and it supplies the graph paper for you. So, we kind of talked about how we would do it.
Yeah, we kind of, sorry, we we have it in a PowerPoint what we would do, but we kind of told you as we went along. For those of you that I did think what was neat about this, you could have a lot of fun with this. I thought, and I think it was you who told me, or maybe I saw it on the association. I don't know. Maybe that's where I saw it. But where like they split kids up and they have to only send text messages and they can't send pictures.
I know the TSA competitive event, they took it out this year. We have a new competitive events guide. But one of the competitions is, say you bring 2 people from your school and she brings 2 people from her school. I take one of hers and one of yours, and they go in a room, and the other 2 go in another room. They had to have cell phones to do it. We gave them a bag of Legos, and Team A had to construct whatever it was they were going to construct and text to the other room how to build without taking a picture. They had to disable, or actually put tape over their lens so they could take a picture of it. They had to text the other one. So communication skills were heavy in that. Technology was heavy in that. It's the same kind of thing. They had to get the kids to really think in multiple ways of how to be good communicators, be fast and efficient.
I think you could, and I, as an extension, as I sit here, I know our English teacher teaches persuasive. You could take it a step farther and say, okay, if you think you need both pictures and communication, then you need to present a PowerPoint, a persuasive PowerPoint over why you think you need both. Maybe you can make that an assignment and correlate that with your English teacher.
Persuasive writing.
Yeah, I mean, do a persuasive writing. Why is one better than the other? And the other thing I thought about after I didn't say anything to you, I didn't think about it till my drive home, but I thought this is very practical. So I don't know how many of you guys, like, you get something and the directions come, and maybe you guys don't actually read the directions to try to put it together. You know what I'm talking about? Like, let's say you buy a bookshelf at Walmart, and I think, how many times are those directions so poorly written?
You typically have 3 types of people. You have a person that's going to look at the box, see how it's done, and visually they'll do it. There's people that open it up, they've got to read the directions step by step and do it. And the third type of person does a combination of both. Those are the kind of people that, so directions are not valid for some people. They want to see what's on the outside box and see what it's supposed to look like, and they're going to somehow figure out how to get it that way.
So we like this lesson. If you do it the way that they've written it, it will probably go a lot faster. It's a lot more work for the teacher though. So, and it's less student-centered, which I think we both agree we're trying to head that direction, more student-centered. You'll need Legos, or they call for Connects, graph paper, internet access, and like we said, talk with your art or drafting teacher for some skill lessons. The problems we see, it's weak. It doesn't actually have any sort of content that teaches the technical drawing. It links you to that outside website. And it's kind of choppy. The activities don't seem to flow together, and it doesn't have a conclusion. So what we'd like to do is, we talked about the Lego activity. Let the kids play with it, make their own designs, and then write their own instructions for a different group and trade. We do think that students will like this lesson, especially those that think they're not good at science, but they can draw or they like to doodle. So that's going to tie in more of their artistic abilities. And Cassie, you mentioned doing it at the beginning of the year because of the scientific method, the procedures required.
When my kids have to do lab reports, they really don't understand the value of the importance of procedures and those being step by step. And I thought you could always do this, and maybe you focus a lot on the actual steps and the steps being detailed to build the Legos. Maybe that could stress the importance of the procedure in the scientific method.
I think it's a really important lesson. I didn't like the way that it was exactly put together. I mean, they need to know how to sketch. I did some drawings, or my students had to build a wind vane this past week by themselves, and I had them follow the steps, the 1 through 12 in their lab journals. And the sketches that they were doing, some of them really, really tiny, and when I'd say, okay, you have to add dimensions, they'd have like one measurement and you wouldn't know what it was going to. So it seems like we need to have a discussion about proper sketching technique and what to include in an engineering journal.
One of the things on one of the sheets that said which you guys kind of went over, is scale, set the scale.
Oh, yeah.
And
And you
it
can
says
connect that with
scale.
the math
So
teacher.
math is
Yeah.
is very abundant here if you
Yeah.
utilize it right.
Right.
Questions? Good job, guys. That's your.
My daughter will be happy I put still in her Legos.
Okay, we had a dumbbell up here. Where did somebody take it?
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Like, don't do that. Don't do that anymore. I think we did have one.
Okay, I'm starting at the beginning of all of these things that you just saw, and I have 4-1, and this particular lesson is pretty lengthy. I think that this entire lesson is probably the big hook, because this seems to be a pretty substantial lesson to begin with. It's going to explain a lot of different things as far as design, the design system, those kind of things. And is kind of the leader of what you see in the smaller lessons. It seems kind of wimpy-wompy to me that you would have the lighter lessons at the beginning, or as you work through or step through the section 4 part, and have so much at the beginning. It seems like my kids would definitely benefit from the technical drawing and those kind of things at the beginning, and then have what we see in number 1 towards the end with some other design. I could almost envision seeing maybe giving them a choice at the end, design this or design that kind of thing. This particular lesson says it's 6 hours, but when I got started, and this may get easier year after year, because you're kind of teaching some of these things that the kids maybe don't have in place yet. Such as in this lesson, there's a lot of things as far as data, qualitative and quantitative, and my kids can't even say the 2 words. So we're going to start pretty early on what's the difference, all those kind of things. But I like data. I think data in science, and especially in the design process, is really, really important. And I see my students as not knowing how to get the good out of data a lot of times. They don't, they collect it because I say to collect it, more or less, and they analyze it with some cheap shot about it's red, or theirs is red and ours is green, or they have big wheels, we have little wheels, or something such as that. So they've really not had enough experience, I think, to interact with that data. What does the data really tell us? So I was really liking this particular lesson as far as some of those things go, because I think it's really important for kids to not only produce something or design something, but when it comes to, I think the important key for some of the students that I teach is going back and making those modifications, because I think a lot of times they haven't done it. They finish the product, there it is, and they're finished. But I think going back and making something better, modifying that kind of thing, sometimes gets lost in some of the design projects that I do. So I'm kind of grateful for this particular lesson in that it gets them to start thinking about data. How would I make this change? How would I make it better? And how would I do that based on the data that I've collected on top of it? So I really liked that particular part of this lesson. I had great aspirations to step through this particular lesson with my kids. I found out there is an abundance of things that they do not know and that they aren't able to do. The big ending of this particular lesson is a lesson where they have to design a prosthesis of some sort. that will assist for an Iraq war veteran or a wounded warrior from there to do either of two things. And that is, they have to choose a missing limb, hand, arm, foot. Where exactly did that injury or that amputation take place? And on top of that, what daily task or sport or whatever does a device, actually a planned device, help them complete that task? First off, when I set out to get kids to start thinking about that, it was clear to me that they didn't understand a lot about missing limbs and those kind of things. They didn't have a real connection. There was maybe one whose uncle had served in Iraq and had lost a limb and had a lot of good information to present to others about that missing limb and those kind of things. So I had an activity where the kids had to be without a thumb or a portion of the hand, and those two fingers were something that they couldn't do. And they had to spend the class period, which is 87 minutes, without the use of that, so that they could kind of get the idea. A thumb was pretty important to the stuff that we do every day. So I wanted to get them to start realizing how that kind of disability or that loss of limb or even just fingers or those kind of things can take away our ability to do simple tasks. And I used this list like unscrewing a jar, doing a clothespin. Not that clothespins are relevant anymore, but it kind of gave us an idea of what was possible for us and what did that truly mean as far as doing a daily task. So I have almost nothing finished as far as the student interaction goes, because I found out that what they knew or what they could really speak about, that information is not apparent for them. This particular lesson gave a lot of different things as far as, let me get back, nope, here. When it came to resources, there's a lengthy list as far as some places to go, how to make a simple prosthetic, different forces, different videos. But if you take a quick shot through that list, some of them are 2003, 2004. A lot of them are books that aren't readily available, those kind of things. And so I did go out and find some videos for myself to use, just because I felt like there was far more and more recent, because you want, if this is innovation and that kind of thing, you would almost want the latest. And some of the videos they had on there on prosthetics were pretty limiting and those kind of things. There is some really great examples of how robotics is really taking a turn for a lot of those warriors who have lost limbs and those kind of things. Some of them double, triple amputees and those kind of things. So this is really, I would suggest if you step through that, a lot of the videos that are out there have different kinds of ways of approaching it. Robotics is one of those kind of things. Bionics, which is a little bit different. So you're really going to give your kids a little bit different idea of different technologies that approach the problem, which is always a great thing for them to see a lot of those kind of differences and things such as that. As I went through the list of things, and again, I have not gotten very far. We have I don't have any kind of design or anything finished yet. I am still working on hopefully getting back to school tomorrow and stepping through some of the qualitative, quantitative resource. Like I said, I was really jazzed about that particular one. If I can find it, here we go. And it is stepping them through the process of testing. And I think that, again, if we're going to get kids to modify, make better, or to do those kind of things, it's really important to show them that process. Mine have a whole lot of difficulty doing that. So a big concentrations on qualitative and quantitative data that can be collected, what the difference is, and this is the particular rubric that is getting them to understand how does that look? What is qualitative in my particular case, and what is quantitative, and how and what part of it is going to be documented here. And they have some of the things that need to be considered. As, that is the weight of the device, affordability, comfort, durability, strength, aesthetics, and the ability to actually conduct the task. So as they go along, I think less importance in the design and the drawing, the sketching, that kind of thing, but collecting data about how does it actually perform for them. And I think that to be a very important piece. As I went through all of these 6 hours, and I'm thinking double up on that particular one. And again, that might go smaller and smaller as over time, because I'm starting at a point where my kids need a lot more teaching about those kind of things. So over time, probably next year, it would be even less, would be my guess. So let's see, there was one other thing that I wanted to hit here. Nope. This has, in supporting files, a lot of kind of groundwork about what is this opposed to this. So it's kind of a basic knowledge sort of a thing as you step through. I think I would be supplementing a lot as far as the data piece goes. There didn't seem to be any real explanation for those kind of things. So I would be probably creating some of those just because of the basic knowledge is a little bit missing for my kids. Also, health, the muscles, nerves, bone structure, that kind of thing. I think having that in place is going to be important for those kind of things. So some kind of team teaching with someone who's responsible for the health. Not all schools, I'm sure, have health taught within the sciences. Sometimes it's someone else. So there would be certainly an opportunity to share this experience with outside of the science part of it. Also, there are wonderful pieces of literature that I can just think of that tells us about people who have devices, people who have needed devices, those kind of things. The South African that actually went to the Olympics, I don't know anymore if he would be a good person to do it, but perhaps he did achieve in such a dramatic way with the very lightweight prosthetic devices that he had. There's a story certainly in his achievement, but a lot of literature could be brought in and how to overcome those kind of things. The biomedical device challenge here, pretty good. I can see it's tightly constrained, reading through the document and those kind of things, tightly constrained in what must be accomplished at the end. And that was a plus in my thinking because it really narrows that. And for some kids in maybe middle school, that's gonna be kind of a relief for them because they have to think within these boundaries. And sometimes I don't think that every lesson here has done that for them. And it's like if you let it be too big for some kids, it's like, oh. And it was for me when I first looked at this. But again, I didn't have enough knowledge about prosthesis or those kind of things. So I had to do a lot of groundwork on those kind of things. Overall, it's a powerful first lesson. I think I would split it up a whole lot, and I would also maybe change the order of this lesson to be more at the end, perhaps, or parts and pieces of it at the end rather than so much at the beginning. And I really liked the lessons that follow, maybe kind of switch that around, but it would be a wonderful lesson for everyone.
Questions? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, go. Unit 6, lesson 3, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just start us off.
Okay, all right, our lesson was Unit 6, Lesson 3, and it was Regolf on the Moon. And so the challenge, kind of the activity, was creating a system or device to scoop up fine particles or grasp large objects off of the surface of the moon.
Yeah, the main thing, this is kind of like that other space lesson. It's the third one of that. So a lot of the background information came from the previous 2 lessons. It's a lot of research. It gives us a lot of, you go to the resources, it gives you a lot of resources. We also found, so a lot of us just given the background information on what the kids would expect to find on the moon, on the surface of the moon, and how astronauts would actually go there and bring the surface material back to Earth. They gave a bunch of different websites and books. We also found a good web quest that gives a lot of background information on, which you can bring up to you there.
So I think Space Kids.
Yeah. It was a pretty neat one. And it goes through a lot of different things. It gives a lot of background information on just the history of space travel, what kind of equipment that they use to bring back information, or to bring back material from the moon's surface.
Were these on the site where you found?
No, this was something that we on the site and found.
PBS.
Yeah, well, it was a link from, I believe that this site got it off PBS. But I don't think the actual site was a PBS. Oh, it is a PBS site.
Yeah.
Yeah, it linked us to a PBS.
Yeah, the original was like a web quest that was created by a school and it linked back to PBS.
Okay.
Let's see, right back here. So we started kind of brainstorming as a group and stuff like that. Some ideas that we kind of brainstormed, that students could brainstorm, making a shovel with a sifting mechanism. It talked about, you could use a strainer or wire for a system. You could use tape to kind of piece of paper to move maybe some of the bigger particles off, kind of lift off. Maybe the smaller dust particles for later, if you're wanting to collect those. Or you could switch that out and use tape, like harder afterwards to collect the dust particles. Other methods can be used at discretion of instructor. So these are just like a couple of the methods that can be used. It was kind of an open-ended project for the kids. They kind of make their decisions on, based on the difficulty, maybe what grade level you're looking at. Depends on kind of how open-ended or how. One of the examples of devices was the double-sided tape on card.
The bigger ones.
Bigger chunks.
A couple different examples of scoop shovels that we made.
Talk about the research. We had all the different internet sources and things. The websites that were provided, the NASA website had textbooks listed, so you could have the textbooks available in the classroom. One thing that did have on there, talk about the regolith, you maybe say that to your students, and at first they don't have an idea what the regolith is.
I didn't have any idea what regold. It's basically soil, but it's on wood.
So they had a picture here, example of like, if an astronaut were to walk on the moon and leave a footprint, it's kind of like stepping in the dirt or dust here on Earth. So they had that kind of as an example.
Attention getting.
Constraints, depending on how open-ended you had the project, that you could have, a constraint could be limited resources, so maybe what you make available to students. The project, it must be 3D, so it had to be a three-dimensional object that you would use to collect the regolith on the moon. And then your object, they want it to be able to deposit 1 ounce of simulated regolith into a round container 3 times.
And this is actually the extension activity. There wasn't really a big project besides doing the research and background information. So this is actually the extension activity. And we found that another activity that was real similar to it on a NASA site that creates actually, it has the kids create the regolith and the whatever deposits that are on the moon surface.
Okay, so basically what I had you do is for the moon surface, I had you lay down, you could either use like graham crackers, sugar graham crackers, saltine crackers, and lay down a layer of those as an example of the moon surface. And then for, like, say, the particles and things that would cover the moon's surface, when we go up, how you get white powder donuts. So something that's going to kind of come off. That save us from making a mess last. And so it would have you have this stay on the floor. You would hold up about head height, and you would probably, with your groups, you would want to maybe find kind of a control height because each student's going to have a different amount of height. So you want to measure that and kind of maybe for your different impact levels. You take it, and is it okay for me to drop this? I'll clean up my mess.
And we thought, we didn't glue these down, but it would probably be better served to actually glue the cracker down. I'm afraid that they're going to explode.
Yeah, so that's going to make a little bit of a mess. Anyway, you would take it from the desired height, and like I said, this could be on the floor, it could be from this height. You would drop it, and then it would crumple the crackers, leave residue from the donuts. So just an example. So yeah, not bad. So you do that a couple times and see it's already left, like some of the residue here.
So the crumbs are supposed to represent the rocks or boulders, and the powder that comes, the powdered sugar that comes off is supposed to represent the regolith. And you're supposed to take the shovel or whatever devices you made Ours is pretty simple devices. Hopefully they'll come up with something better than that. But, scoop the rocks. Actually, our sticky, they could, the sticky one was actually supposed to pick up the bigger chunks, get rid of those, and then we're going to use that to scoop up the dust. We're supposed to put it in the container.
And for alternate solutions, that's a time at the end of it where they can decide, was this process good? What materials would have been better?
More about the process too.
That's pretty well.
Question. So you had mentioned gluing them down. Why would you glue them down?
Well, it didn't actually happen as bad as I thought. I don't think we would. I was just thinking it might knock them completely out and kind of go crazy, but yeah, it's working pretty well.
And the
How
only
old are
thing.
those donuts?
Yeah, they're from the convenience store.
That would be the thing. I would
Check
think
the expiration
the
date.
graham crackers would work better, especially with the white powder donut, is that you would
Yeah.
see the peel off better.
Yeah, and it's actually supposed to,
you can
simulate like
see
a
it.
meteor hitting.
Right.
And, you could actually just kind of crumple it up
There you
too.
go.
I'm sure they'd have fun.
Oh, yeah, the kids are gonna have a blast.
Kids would, I would.
And your janitor will love you after that.
So,
That's why I give the janitor chocolate.
Everybody want a donut?
Then you give them a whole pack of donuts. Thank you for doing that. Any other questions, guys? Good job. And lots of knowledge. They were unfortunate in that they weren't here the first day, and everybody had selected something, so they got the assignment to actually go back to one of the ones that we had already done. So you're gonna see what they would have done with one of the assignments that you guys got to actually do the first day, which what that was.
We did lesson 1-3, unit 1, lesson 3.
Unit 1, lesson 3, okay.
Most of those, your student discussed about how there's no technology, or all technology has flaws, no perfect design. So I basically start out with, I got to. Discuss them, divide them into groups, and then they read the new one, and then or they read an invention, and then what possibly caused it wrong. So you divide it into groups. Each one does one of the or a different scenario for each one: water and plastic bags. And there's some questions about what that was, and you can go through and discuss it. Also, we just made supposed to teach discuss it, and made this hour.
We're assuming you guys went through all these already, right? You didn't go through this stuff?
I don't know.
There's no one we didn't get to.
Oh, okay.
Well, I would have changed it a little bit.
No.
You might show them those releases then.
Okay. Well, let's go back.
The initial introduction is a worksheet that has a list of inventions.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's going back up there. And on the one side of the card has a list of the invention and how it changed things. And then the kids are supposed to look at how it improved people's lives and stuff like that. And then the back side of the card, 20 years later, 40 years later, what's happened because of this as far as environmentally and cause and effect sorts of things.
Yeah, that's too big.
So the front side, we see in 1970, a compact fluorescent light bulb was invented, how it's going to change things, how awesome it is. It's an actual news release that was put out whenever that invention went. And on the back side, we have a news release in 2011 about 14-year-olds hospitalized from mercury poisoning because of these things. And so we see the relationship between what we need and the inventions that somebody comes up with, and then maybe later on the effects of that people don't necessarily plan. The big idea of the lesson is that
what was it again?
all designs have flaws. There's no perfect design. And so they see the relationship between all of these things. So that's the initial kind of a hook for them. They see the inventions. Oh yeah, that sounds really cool. And on the backside, you see 20 years later, 30 years later, the news release that, okay, maybe there were some mistakes here. Somebody didn't think, some things somebody didn't think about. So that's the hook. That's the opening lesson. From there, we then go to, we made a PowerPoint of different types of technology and talking about pros and cons. Then we would want to make a list on the board of pros and cons of these different types of technology. Laptop computers. You know, the kids are probably going to see a lot of the pros of these things. What's so good about them? We're assuming we're going to need to direct them toward the cons, the bad things. And the teacher resource materials, they do have a list of different things that the negatives of some of those inventions also. So it is helpful there.
So you don't have to flip through all these.
Styrofoam, you see we've got all those. So we just thought that'd be another way to kind of get them interested and get them then talking about pros and cons. From there, let's go ahead and go to the lesson plan here. Did you have something else to do?
No, I don't think so.
So that was the hook, get them into it, and then the next project then is.
Oh, you just want to do this, the PowerPoint stuff?
The what?
This, the pictures here, this lesson.
Yeah, well, and I do think you guys did the radioactive extraction activity.
Yes.
And we didn't go into other classrooms. We just took some time here and built what we thought would work. To me, the activity was really good. I felt like I was thinking when I was doing it, I think the kids would also. I wonder, you know, we missed those first couple of days. I've been wondering how much we make the kids plan things out first, or do we just let them get into it and go. You know, the notebooks there are great. Do you have your kids plan these things out? You just give them the materials and go at it.
We had a little bit of that discussion before John's on here, but some of that discussion is that when we did the group that first day, there were people that wanted to dive right in and do it, and the others that were sitting there doing the notebook. And like John had made the comment that he lived with engineers in college, and they usually typically like to get them in there doing things and then go back and be reflective. But engineering by design is about the process.
Right.
So we want to know what was their initial thoughts, what was their original concept of design. Then you give it to them. They start manipulating and go, oh, that's not going to work. Or let's redo this way because we can use this now. So it is a part of the process to get them there.
Right. And with
there were a couple different, I can't remember with this group, there were a couple different ones I think we all agreed. Give them the materials, let them do it, and then write. And some of them we said, it would be better to write and get them in the process. So,
this was
radioactive one.
You got a 20-minute time limit on this one. Was part of the activity, and so drawing things out and planning maybe wouldn't have worked so well with a 20-minute time limit.
Well,
And
what
then
some of us did is we had some people
who were drawing.
who were doing the drawing, just put the teams into jobs.
Yeah.
And then the major.
It really depended on a lot of things for the 7th grade. It depended on what the actual challenge was. And yeah, there were strengths. Some people really sit down and delved into drawing. Some people were writing paragraphs and going, oh, I'm doing this wrong. I'm like, no, you're not doing it wrong. If you want to write it out, write it out. Some kids will really get into drawing it and be detailed and label everything. But there are those kids that are going to want to, the sooner they get their hands on it. Right. So it's a team approach, and I think that's one of the hardest things for you guys as teachers. Have to figure out, do you do popsicle sticks like John did, or do you really plan it out and say, we're going to have this cohesive group here because, you know, somebody's going to draw, somebody's going to be the hands-on. So, you know, flip a coin. One time it may work really well, the next time it may not work at all.
Well, I thought this activity was a good one. I mean, you know, I think the kids would get into it and they'd be excited about having, okay, we've got 20 minutes, they want to get something done, and then there's a timed event at the end to see how fast you can go it. They said you guys knock the bags over, you could knock the bags over and then pull them out of there. To me, that seems like cheating. I felt like they should have to scoop them out and do it like that. So I don't think I would allow my kids, I would have them taped to the place. They couldn't move the bags. I wouldn't let them pull them over. They'd have to reach in and get something out.
So people manipulated the bag, cut it in half because they.
Okay, cheaters. That's okay.
Exactly. I did not say it.
Yeah, outside the boxes. That is something we do want them to think, and so I can see that, but I don't know.
Once again, the discussion happened on that day about what would be the parameters, what would you give them? Because students are going to be very seriously upset if you say, oh, no, you can't do that after you've started the process. So clarity is one of the things you've got to predetermine. What am I going to allow them to get away with?
Well, I can see you could cut the container. I'd have a hard time dragging the radioactive material across the soil to get it into the other ones.
No, it said they had to take it. We didn't.
They
No, I
just
mean,
taped
the
it
material
side.
is, if you dragged it out, I thought they said something, dragged it out and like that, if you just scooped it from the side.
They
Yeah.
scooped it, they went in and scooped it.
Oh.
You didn't drag it out.
Okay. So honestly, the way they drew that up, they wrote it up, I felt like pretty good project. We both did like that.
Yeah.
The next then the final project in that one is what's that last one called? The rad waste thing, where you have you have to build something to sift out the different types of material. Yeah, rad waste is almost what it was. And, we gave it a shot. We just felt like we would try to see what happened when we built our own. And honestly, the first one, we failed. We didn't do very good. We just had that cup on the bottom, glued the strainer to it, put the cup on top and poured the stuff in. And of course, we couldn't keep a good seal on it, so things leaked out the side. And so we felt like that would have been a big fail on that one. And so then we thought, okay, we'll seal it up a little better. And that worked pretty well, except for after you've got them apart.
Yeah.
After you have them actually sifted, then how do you keep them from spilling when you're ready? They have to be in two separate containers at that point. They're still only in one. And so that failed also. And then we went to a third step, and you're going to have to explain what we're thinking on the third one. We still have the sifter here at this point, the wires right there.
Yeah, we just sealed it off. So I think, remember right, we had the top, so it's kind of like a funnel, poured it in, so the sand would kind of stick there, and it falls through. And no, the beans must stay there, and the sand goes through to the bottom. And that way, we had it all sealed up, and you could shake it better, so you could get all the sand to filter through the beans and the sand to separate. Otherwise, the sand kind of stuck with the beans and it'd separate out as well. I think that's what the reason I did that.
And so, every invention has good things and bad things, pros and cons to everything. There's good ideas, but the good ideas sometimes have negative consequences. And that's something they're going to learn from this also. This seems like a good idea, and then when you put it to the test, you've got some problems, and you got to go back to it.
Very good. Thank you. Couple of comments I want to make, because I do leadership training, and one of the things that I noticed with what you guys were doing with some of your lessons, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, we did that one. It was you guys that did the peanut. Yeah, that was the sandwich that's supposed to have there. I've done this with leadership a lot, and it's great when I have the state officers and I say, okay, this is what I want you to do. And they go, really? You're going to let us do that? I'm like, yeah. Because literally, you give them all the ingredients, they have it all right there. And we make sure we preface the area. And I say, okay, be as obnoxious as you can be. And so the one kid was great. Open the jar, and he grabs the knife. And it just breaks, it's a plastic knife. And the kids just crack up. And they're like, oh, come on. So he opens it up, and he gets the jelly. And I'm like, this is the one kid, I love him to pieces, because when I said be as obnoxious as you can, he did. And I said, you do not have to save the jelly. You don't have to save it, so go ahead. And so what did he do? He said, put a little bit of peanut butter or jelly. And he grabs it and goes, and jelly goes everywhere. And of course, everybody's cracking up. It's leadership skills to show, if it's done right, once you've done the process, is to talk about what went wrong here. What could we have done better? The communication was the biggest thing, because we didn't step by step go through that.
And so it's the learning process of that. That's part of leadership. And it's great when they have things like this for your kids to do. And then the written directions. I've done that many times of how are you going to do that? Step by step, write it out for me. And be as minutely to the pinpoint as you can. Kids hate doing that. They just want to jump in, which is what, goes right back to what you were just asking. Do you allow them the opportunity to sit and write and do all that, or do you just throw them into it? It does depend on what your goal is. Is your goal to get them to understand the process? Do they need to do some of it? And some of these kids are going to learn better by somebody else drawing it and going, oh, I would never have done that. And then they start tweaking on theirs. That is some of it. And we talked about there are a few of those lessons that when it said 3 hours and you could, you did the project and you got 3 hours out of it, but that wasn't the learning moment. The moment was to go back and redo and fine tune, just like you were doing with this last one. You guys have got to decide that. And I've seen a lot of great things, a lot of concepts. Thank you so much. I have 3 pages worth of notes to send the national office. They're going to love me again. But once again, knowing the things that you would do different and sharing them. I need everybody. You cannot leave this room until every one of you sends me your PowerPoint to me at COLE4KSTSA@gmail.com. You send those to me, and I will put them on a Google Drive and make sure that you guys get them. I have your email addresses. I think we got the couple that were miscorrected. But some of you shared, I saw some aha moments. Some of you are going, So let's share that stuff. Let's keep it coming. And I applaud you. Some of you have gone back and already started implementing some of these things. That's phenomenal. That's what we want you to do. We want you to be encouraged enough to go through this and do it with your students. We're trying to make a nationwide change, but especially right here in the heart of Kansas. And you are doing it. So appreciate that. Tomorrow we'll finish the 4th grade kits and bring them for Wednesday and Thursday, and then I will start on the 7th and 9th grade. I haven't started gathering all the materials for 7th grade right now. So, and I will, once I finish the kit tomorrow, I have all the materials except for 2 things, and then I'll put the cost sheet for the 4th grade.
Can you tell us how many kids that would serve?
It's going to be like most of these, you're going to get enough for like 5 groups. So that's what I start you with.
And that'll be on the ESSDACK side, or what side, where will we find it?
Since we have your emails, I'll probably just email it out to you. It'd be the easiest way.
The 4th grade teacher already asked me how much is the kit.
I gotta do it, put together. I would have had it done this week, but I literally got back at 3 o'clock in the morning from St. Jude all week with my daughter. So it's been a long couple weeks here. So anyway, we'll get it done. We'll get it to you.
And I'd just like to thank you guys for being willing to be the first group through this. I hope that you guys feel like us bringing this to Kansas has been a good thing for you guys as you try to implement next generation science standards. I think we got everything except for this.
Oh.
We need to do the
plus deltas.
Then I'll give you your certificate.
Okay, plus deltas.
I knew we would finish early today, so.
Aren't you guys lucky ones?
I do.
Here you go. Just for you. These things are fun, except for getting them off. And then they don't want to stick up there on the sheet. Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
You do. You don't. That was a feat itself. Most people went, no, that's not possible. I now have proof.
I hope that it's. She said she's mad. They told me that.
Just throw them at you guys.
So will you guys give us?
You can put that in.
Suggestions? I'm gonna make this point.
You can use that as your, that's not.
Yeah, it's still.
No, thank you guys.
They used to have that last season about 20 years old. But she can't do it.
Okay, now I think they're good.
I think. I mean, I sent a sheet out, but I shouldn't have said that it went, that it got to you. Huh? But yeah, I know. You were here 3 of the days. And then you guys, I can tell you spent extra time going back and trying to get some of the first days, so I'm gonna work with you. I always love this time because I learn so much from you guys.
I got a question.
Yes.
So on the 9th grade, because I teach high school, so our Brenda, anyhow, she's math. She came for that, and that's why Nathan, the superintendent, she said he didn't really want me to mess up any more school to do the 9th grade ones. I don't know. I'm just gonna ask you about that.
Okay, so who's gonna do it, you or them?
Well, she's already came. Well, she's came to most of the 9th, whatever the 9th grade one.
The foundation, yes.
Yeah. And I don't know, he was saying I should just need to talk to her, have her talk to me about what's going on. Because she doesn't really do that much science. She's just a math teacher.
So the first.
But I think part of the reason he didn't want me to come to it because he didn't want to mess with school. Another week of school, essentially. So I don't know. I was just going to ask you how, since you said last time everybody had to come, actually go through it. Yeah.
We have to make some kind of special arrangement.
Yeah.
I have to make sure that you got at least 80%.
Yeah. Well, I meant like for the foundations part. I don't know. So I don't know. I was just going to ask you about that.
Well, and I'm going to say
what's all there?
foundations will make you qualified to teach this certificate on foundation to make you highly qualified to teach the CTE course.
Okay.
Even though you're just math or science, you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. So on the CT, okay. But so that's gonna be like an actual class. Does it associate with a certain like?
Yeah.
You just
can
call it.
Yeah, foundations of technology actually can be your intro, or you can use computer apps. One of those two you can use for the intro class.
Well, maybe okay, I don't know. I'm not sure what they're doing, but okay.
Maybe I need to talk with Nathan and just we can decide what way you want to go.
Right, well, no,
and whoever the one is certified will be the one that needs to teach your record.
Okay.
See,
so, I don't know.
see the first class really is geared for science and industrial. The third class that we're going to do this summer is definitely math.
Okay. Yeah, you were telling me about that.
And that will set them up.
Maybe I don't really need to see it.
Huh?
Maybe I don't really need to go there. Anyway.
So we'll just see, because whoever teaches geometry, see you're going to want to come.
Yeah, that's not me.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're to the certificate thing, and I hope that I've caught any misspellings. Pamela Ash. Oh, Wendell Bontrager. And check them over, make sure I've got them right, because you can use these for highly qualified. Lynette Britton. Did I mispronounce it?
Britain, like the country.
Okay. I should have Dr. Curtis Chandler on this one, because this was a cross training. I went and took the training, and then him and Carolyn are doing this again. And Carolyn Cole.
Oh, thank you.
And then Cody Cook.
Here, young man, thank you
And
very
just
much.
check and make sure that the name is spelled right. I didn't miss anything. Shane Hines.
Thank you.
Dwight Hurt.
You're supposed to do it properly.
Okay.
Young man, thank you. Thank you very much. Come on.
Okay. Ryan Hizzy.
Right over here. Here.
Heisey. Carolyn Jackson.
Carlene.
And then Cassie.
High five. You're thick. High five there, chick.
Well,
You're fine.
I sliced the end of my finger out.
You really?
So it's just
Right here. This young lady right
There we
here.
go. And then Erica
Yep.
Malone. Oh, you guys are wonderful. Lindsay Martin.
Wait a minute, Lindsay? I say I didn't see Lindsay.
Okay, Nancy
Nancy.
McKay. David Miller. And then John Nyhus.
This is your John.
Sarah Osborne. Bob Romy. Mark Schmidt.
Mark's back here in this room.
Okay, Travis Toussaint.
Where'd he go? Oh, where'd he go? We'll get him.
We get him. Yeah, make sure I
He
don't.
might be here.
Diane Wise Rhodes.
Hey, I'm just.
Jason Wilderman.
Hey, I'm pretty good with things. Good.
Okay, we're just down to Travis now.
I think you will.
So.
Anything else for the good of the cause? Anyone?
And you guys, feel free to shoot things to Carolyn and I and Curtis, because you may come up with something, hey, that would improve this, and remember, that'll just keep making it better and better.
You're free to go.
You are free to go
Yeah. I knew we'd finish early on the 5th day. We did back in Maryland too, so. And we really pumped it this week, you know. So. Well, thanks for